Opening. This is an audiobook recording of The Quarterback's Secret, Book 1, which is protected under international and domestic copyright laws. All rights to the text are reserved by the author, J.K. Jones. The narration is performed by Clyde Willis and Ralph Sharon. Unauthorized reproduction, distribution, or public performance of this recording, in part or in whole, is strictly prohibited. This audiobook is for your personal use only and may not be resold, transferred, or shared in any form without the express permission of the copyright holders. Thank you for respecting the hard work of the author, and we hope you enjoy this. Prologue. Hunter Davis. "So, what happened?" Nancy Carwell asked, her voice somewhat impatient. I kept my gaze fixated on my callous hands, ignoring the pounding of my heart as it tried to flee my chest. The lights surrounding me were insanely hot, causing sweat to drip down my spine. There was a pale scar running the length of my thumb to my elbow. It was deep and white, with scar tissue and discoloration. I tuned out the grumble of the crowd, focusing on each breath. In and out. Out and in. "You were the best player on the team," Nancy Carwell continued, tilting her head. "Hunter Davis, the quarterback who led the Granite Peak Gladiators to the championship game with a record-breaking season. You threw for 4,500 yards, 35 touchdowns, and a 70% completion rate. You had more game-winning drives than any player in the league's history. So, where did it all go wrong?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. My eyes were fixed on the sheriff who had just arrived, his stance rigid and commanding, hands resting on his hips, jaw clenched tight. The sheriff's presence was like a heavy fog rolling in, and it was clear. I was going to prison right after this interview. I thought of Skylar then. His pale blue eyes, deep and clear like the ocean, flashed through my mind. I remembered how his gaze had always softened whenever he looked at me, the way he'd smile even on the toughest days. "Hunter?" Nancy asked. My vision snapped back to the present, focusing through the haze of anxiety. I saw Nancy's concerned eyes, the reporter's camera flashes, and the shifting shadows of the crowd. My mind was a jumble of statistics and feelings, but one thought cut through the noise with precision. I had to set things right. "You're a hero to this team, a gladiator through and through," Nancy's voice broke through again, her tone almost pleading. "You led them to victory. You have to tell us what happened." I drew a deep breath, feeling the air fill my lungs. I clenched my jaw, trying to summon the courage I used to have on the field. And finally, my eyes locked on hers. Nancy wore a navy blue blazer. Her blonde hair was styled in a sleek bob, and her piercing green eyes held on to me and didn't let go, not even for a second. I was about to make a decision that would change everything. "Look, Hun, if you aren't going to talk, then—" "I'll tell you," I interrupted, making her freeze. The crowd held their breath, and I could practically hear my father blowing a gasket. "I'll tell you everything." I paused, then forced myself to continue. "It all started the day I killed my best friend." Chapter 1. Redwood Creek, Texas. Hunter Davis. 10 years ago, I rolled my eyes at Skylar, trying not to be annoyed with him as he fumbled for the 15th time with his baggage. We were already running late for the bus, and I was eager to get a seat near the back next to Lavinia, who'd been giving me flirtatious looks ever since we arrived. The area was bustling with students and teachers alike, all of them kissing their kids goodbye as they boarded the school bus on the way to Redwood Trail summer camp. I was so excited I was practically bouncing. The entire crew was here, and I was anxious to get to them. Mason Reed, Jordy, Lavinia, and EJ were all waiting for me, leaning against the school bus without a care in the world. I met Mason, Jordy, and EJ at football summer camp last year, and we'd all become fast friends. Lavinia was a new addition to the crew, although I could tell she wasn't going anywhere. Lavinia Carter was a firebrand. She had hazel eyes and dark brown curly hair that framed her face. She had this look about her that she knew something about you before you could even speak. I'd been fantasizing about her for months, and now that we were going away to camp alone, I wasn't going to waste it. She wore a pair of white shorts, and her t-shirt was 2 sizes too small, exposing her smooth belly. My throat went dry looking at her, and I hurried to round on Skylar to bark at him to hurry up. Skylar flashed me one of his award-winning smiles. Okay, I'm ready. My jaw ticked when I stared down at him, and suddenly, I felt pathetic standing next to him. Skylar had been my best friend since grade school. We did everything together. However, last summer my dad enrolled me in football camp, and since then, I've been feeling strange when he looked at me. Not that he wasn't my best friend anymore. I just never realized what a loser he was until a few months ago. Mason, Jordy, and EJ all came over to play a game of football. We were hyped to the max, amped up like a couple of stereo sets ready to blow. We were just about to go onto the field when Skylar showed up. I was so excited that I asked him to join us, and it was a big mistake. Skylar was scrawny. Not that we all weren't scrawny at our age. I was only 16, but I had filled out over the summer, and so did the rest of the guys. But Skylar kind of remained short and skinny. EJ and Jordy ran a play, and Skylar couldn't catch a damn thing. And the worst thing was, it wasn't like he didn't know how. Skylar was a sports enthusiast. He knew so much about football that it boggled my mind sometimes. But when it came to playing, he was, well, useless on the field. I'd been so embarrassed that I told him to just sit this one out and let us play. Things didn't really get easier from there. Skylar was still stuck in the mindset that girls were gross and we needed to stick together. He always wanted to play video games and eat junk food, but I was past all of that by now. I wanted to train, lift weights, be with the guys, head to the gym. Sitting around all day discussing cheats for Call of Duty just didn't do it for me anymore. Skylar was different, though. He hated school, hated the teachers. They all turned a blind eye whenever he showed up with bruises, and more than once I had to bandage his torso from when his foster father beat him with a wrench. Skylar's home life was a mess. My father and I were working on a way to formally adopt him, but the process was very slow, considering my father was a single man, and Skylar already had a home. I wanted us to be brothers because he had been my brother all my life, and yet, another part of me wanted nothing to do with him. I felt bad thinking that. Skylar was amazing, the best friend anyone could ask for, but things were changing. Sometimes all of his problems felt like an anchor around my neck, dragging me down with him, and at 16 all I wanted to do was have fun. I grabbed Skylar's bag and hauled it over my back in order to speed up the process. "Let's go," I grumbled. A small flush spread across Skylar's cheeks when he watched me, muscles bulging from the weight. I'd filled out well this year, standing several inches taller than him. I wasn't as big as Mason, but I was still pretty fit. Hours at the gym and running suicides did that for me. Skylar used his index finger to push his golden-rimmed glasses higher on the bridge of his nose. It was a nervous habit, but I was so anxious to get on the bus, I didn't care to find out what he was so worried about. This would be our final year at Redwood Trails summer camp. In the fall, we start high school, and that would be that. Skylar and I had everything planned out. We'd head to WEU, and then I'd head to the NFL right after, and Skylar would follow, doing whatever it was he was interested in. To be honest, I stopped paying attention after WEU was mentioned. It was the best university in all of Texas, with one of the greatest football teams in the league, so I had to go there. "You boys ready?" my dad asked as he stepped out of the truck, his lanky frame unfolding with an awkward grace. He had that intense look in his dark eyes, like he was studying every detail of the scene before him. He turned to me, his gaze piercing. "Hunter," he said, his voice carrying an edge of command. "You keep your head in the game. No distractions. I want you in top shape when I pick you up." "Yes, sir." His words felt like a weight settling heavily on my shoulders. I nodded, trying to mask the anxiety that churned in my chest. I couldn't afford to slack off this summer. Mason, Jordy, EJ, and I all developed a plan to stay in shape while we went to camp. Next to me, Skylar shuffled his feet, his pale blue eyes darting between my dad and me with an unreadable expression. Dad's gaze softened just a fraction as he looked at Skylar. "You take care of him, Skylar. You hear?" "Yes, sir," Skylar squeaked, his voice cracked a bit, causing several heads to turn. "I won't let you down, sir." My dad laughed, ruffling Skylar's curly blonde hair. A strange jealousy flared in my chest. My dad had no problem treating Skylar to a meal, pulling him in for a hug or ruffling his hair, but he never did those things with me. That was another reason a part of me didn't really want to be around Skylar anymore, because it almost seemed like my father liked him more than he liked me. "No stray behavior. Keep your focus," my dad clipped. "All right, boys, be safe." We both nodded, and I took our things to the bus and loaded them in the back. Skylar was already talking a mile a minute about some new species of birds he was looking forward to spotting on the trip. But as soon as I locked eyes with Lavinia, everything around me became white noise. She was leaning against the side of the bus, sucking on a red lollipop. Her gaze slanted to mine in a way that made heat blaze across my cheeks. "Hey, are you listening?" Skylar peered up at me, his pale blue eyes making me start. "Yeah. I cleared my throat. Just shut up and get on the bus. I'll be there in a second." Mason snickered nearby, and so did the rest of them. Skylar flushed, chewing his bottom lip. "Okay. See you on the bus." He boarded the bus, and the second he disappeared, Mason pounced on me. "Damn! Finally away from the troll!" Mason laughed, throwing his arm around my neck and dragging me into a headlock. I laughed, shoving him off. I thought that guy would never shut up. Mason was tall and athletic, with short, wavy brown hair that was often a bit tousled from practice. His bright blue eyes sparkled with confidence, and his strong build made him stand out anywhere he went. He was a damn good linebacker, and it wasn't until after we went to summer school that I realized his father was the district attorney of the state of Texas, Jonathan, otherwise known as Jack Reed. "Don't talk about him like that," I said, but there was no heat to my words. "He'll be my brother soon. I pity you, my friend." EJ, or Ethan Jones, was lean and fit, with straight, sandy blonde hair cut short for easy maintenance. His green eyes were always sharp and full of laughter. He always wore designer clothing, but I couldn't let that fool me. He was a skilled cornerback, and I knew if we ever played at WEU, we'd be headed straight to state nationals. Being a loser can be contagious. You don't want to catch that. "EJ, you must be the MVP of being a loser. Do you have a trophy for that? Or is it just a lifelong achievement?" Lavinia muttered, rolling her eyes. "Ouch," EJ said, putting his hand over his heart, feigning hurt. "So much for friendship, Lavinia." Lavinia cocked a brow at him that said they were anything but friends. Mason laughed, then said, "Come on, we're going to miss the bus. Did you watch the game last night? Tyreek was a beast. The guy's like a video game character, warp speed and all." "Boo yeah," Jordy interjected, throwing his arms around both of us. "And I'm going to smash his record." Jordy was a bit shorter than us, but stocky, with a round face and curly black hair that was always a little wild after a game. His warm brown eyes were full of energy, and his big grin made him a dynamic wide receiver. "Sure, Jordy, but let's be real. You need a time machine to catch up with Tyreek. Last time I checked, your top speed was tripping over your own shoelaces. Maybe you should start with breaking your own record for most missed tackles." EJ laughed hysterically at his own lame joke. "Shut up, EJ!" we all said collectively and then burst out laughing. Mason kept his hand on my neck, talking a mile a minute about the game and the cool plays we're going to do once we arrived at camp. We boarded the bus, and I couldn't wait to discuss my ideas with them, but then realized with a start that I had promised to sit with Skylar. He waved me over, grinning like mad. I frowned, pausing with Mason right behind me. "What's the holdup?" Mason asked, then snorted when he caught sight of Skylar. "Your choice, man." He plopped down into a seat near the front along with the others. "Oh no," EJ snickered. "A one-way ticket to Loser Town, all aboard!" He hollered, and I flushed, my jaw tightened. "Shut up," I hissed at him, then grabbed a seat beside Mason, ignoring Skylar. Crap. Guilt clawed at my chest, but it was immediately eased when I realized I was sitting right in front of Lavinia. Her hazel eyes landed on mine, and a smile curled her plump lips. "Hey." "Hi." My throat felt like sandpaper. "How was your summer?" "Good." She racked her eyes over me. "Better now." Throughout the entire bus ride, I didn't look back once. When we got to Redwood Trails summer camp, the bus was buzzing with excitement. The camp was surrounded by big, tall trees, and the cabins were cute but old-fashioned, with wooden walls and flower boxes under the windows. We made arrangements to meet up for a game later, and I was overjoyed to learn that we'd have a lot of free time and not be smothered by the counselors. Since we were older, the events they had were mostly outdoors, and I was pumped for it. "Where are you headed?" Mason asked me. "We're all bunking in cabin 9. "Yeah, we're the Niners, get it?" EJ laughed. "You know, as in the San Francisco 49ers. "I think I want to punch a hole through his head," Lavinia said. "I second that motion," Jordy replied. "Don't," Mason warned. "That would just give him another hole to talk out of." "Come on, you guys, that was gold," EJ snickered. I shook my head. "Nah, I'm at cabin 4 with Skylar." "And the loser strikes again," EJ said. "Well, good luck, bro." "I told you not to call him that," I said through gritted teeth. "Touché," EJ crackled. "I didn't realize you were aiming for a Loser of the Year's award. You're really going above and beyond, Hunter." "Whatever. It's amazing how you managed to make being average look like an achievement," I replied, hiking my duffel bag up higher. "We're best friends." "Not for long," EJ laughed again, grating on my nerves. "And certainly not if you want to continue your winning streak." He threw his arm over my shoulder. "A word of advice, Hunter. Don't let losers weigh you down. You'll regret it when you're trying to reach the top and all they do is claw at your feet." I shrugged him off. "Like I said, Skylar is my best friend. I'd explain it to you, but I left my patience and crayons at home." Jordy and Lavinia burst out laughing. "Burn!" Mason said, chuckling. I waved them goodbye, still smiling, but it slowly waned when cabin 4 came into view. Crap. I hadn't even said a word to Skylar even after I left the bus. I didn't know if he'd gotten his bags or how he carried them to the cabin. I hurried over, guilt eating away at me. Opening the door, I saw that the cabin had 2 plain beds and some old furniture. Skylar was sitting on the edge of one bed, messing with the worn-out sheets and biting his lip like he was nervous. "Crap! Sorry, did you get your stuff?" Skylar shrugged, and I saw that his clothes were bunched up in the corner near his bed. I had to make several trips, but it's cool. I scowled at the mess, then threw my bag onto the bed and started unpacking. We lapsed into silence, neither of us talking. I changed into some basketball shorts and a jersey, eager to get out of there to meet the guys for a game. "Are you going somewhere?" "Yeah, the guys invited me for a game. We're going to play and head to the cafe after." "Oh." I froze, hating the sound of hurt in his voice. Every year we'd come to summer camp together, but this year I really wanted to spend it with my new friends. "Sorry." I turned to him. "Rain check? We can see those birds you were talking about before." Skylar tucked his stray blonde hair behind his ear. "It's fine. Have fun with your friends." "Sure," I muttered, then hurried out of the room. I got maybe 10 feet when the ache of guilt in my chest grew too much, and I slowed to a stop. Crap. I considered going back for him, telling him to join us for one game, but I didn't want him to embarrass me in front of Lavinia. Maybe it had been a mistake going to camp together this year. Skylar was just not at all like my new friends, and I wanted to make a good impression with them. Was that so bad? I huffed and darted off, shoving those thoughts back down into the abyss. Great. This is going to be a long summer. Chapter 2. Hunter Davis. Skylar shoved a magazine underneath his pillow the second I opened the door. I paused for a moment, breathless and slightly sweaty from the game. Skylar flushed, looking guilty. We stared at each other before I decided I didn't want to know, and shrugged off my jersey shirt from earlier. The game had been amazing. Playing with Jordy, EJ, and Mason was like an otherworldly experience. We all used each other's strengths and weaknesses and played off them. By the time the season started, we'd be more than ready. I went to quickly shower, and as soon as I got out, I shut off the lights and went to bed. Skylar didn't speak to me, and I didn't speak to him. There wasn't much to say. I felt deep down we didn't have much in common anymore, and with football, I wanted to be the best that I could be. Redwood Creek was a dump compared to most towns, however. It was their football team that put the town on the map. The Texas Granite Peak Gladiators were one of the best teams in the leagues, a team of legends, and now I had the chance to be one of them. That dream stuck with me until my eyes felt heavy and I drifted off to sleep. I woke early the next morning while Skylar was still snoring away and headed out to meet the guys for a run, after we had breakfast in the cafeteria. Oh man, EJ groaned. I feel like my arm is going to fall off. He rolled his shoulder and Mason laughed at him. Don't throw so hard next time, idiot, Lavinia huffed out. Why don't you kiss it better, Lavinia? EJ made kissy faces at her and she shoved him off. You, Lavinia scoffed. As if I want your diseased mouth anywhere near me. I'd rather get a hug from a cactus. Come on, Lavinia, you know you can't resist me, EJ teased, winking. Oh, sure, Lavinia rolled her eyes. Just like I can't resist a root canal. Keep dreaming, EJ. I laughed at their banter, then stiffened when Skylar entered the cafeteria. He looked even more pathetic with his sunscreen still not fully dried, running in a long stripe down his nose. His shorts were bright red and inched high on his scrawny legs, and his shirt was tucked in. Skylar used his index finger to shove his glasses higher on his nose and shot me a shy smile when we locked eyes. Crap. What do I do? I gripped the table until my knuckles were white, silently begging him with my eyes not to come over. I felt like a total douchebag, but EJ and Mason would tear him to shreds and I wasn't sure I was ready to listen to it. Hey. Lavinia's voice broke me out of my stare and I turned to her. Are you okay? Fine, I replied gruffly. She turned to see what I was looking at, then scoffed, her cruel gaze eyeing Skylar up and down. Oh, look, it's Skylar. Maybe he can show you how to fail at everything without even trying. I laughed, playing along, but my stomach churned. Yeah, maybe he'll teach me how to blend into the wall so well that no one even knows I'm here. Think I could use that to sneak out of class? Lavinia chuckled. You wish. But hey, if you want to practice being invisible, you've got the perfect mentor. She glanced at me, a sly smile playing on her lips. Let's see if you can make it through camp without losing your mind. Skylar was close to our table now and my jaw tightened. I'd never outright tell him to get lost, but crap, this would ruin my time with my team. Oh no, EJ cackled as soon as Skylar approached with his tray of food. You look lost, little rabbit. Did you wander out of your safe, cozy burrow? Skylar's cheeks flushed, but he said nothing, focusing on balancing his tray. Careful, EJ, Mason added with a smirk. If you scare him too much, he might just hide under a table for the rest of lunch. EJ laughed, eyeing Skylar's tray. Yeah, because nothing screams winner like avoiding everyone. What's next, Skylar? Gonna show us your impressive talent for making your food disappear without making eye contact? Skylar's eyes flickered to mine briefly, full of hurt, before he quickly looked away. Lavinia's laughter rang out, and I forced myself to join in, even though a part of me felt a pang of guilt. "Assholes," Skylar muttered, then walked to another empty table. EJ picked up his napkin and tossed it at Skylar's head. He missed, but everyone else started laughing around them. "Okay, knock it off," I muttered. EJ snorted and went back to eating, as did the others. I chanced to look at Skylar, but he had his back to me, slightly hunched over his food. Damn, I felt like such a dick. How could I do that to him? I groaned inwardly and swore to myself I'd make it right before the day was over. The day passed in a strange blur. The camp counselors decided that we kick off the first day at camp with an intense game of flag football. I was totally here for it. Mason, EJ, Jordy, and I were all pumped for all things physical, and we went straight to task. Since most of the kids there didn't care much for the physical aspect, our team dominated the game, until the counselors realized our advantage and split us up. Lavinia, EJ, and I were together. The rest were on a different team. I tried not to stare at her too much, but Lavinia was really too beautiful, especially in a pair of tight jean shorts that hugged her curves. She smiled brightly at me and we went to war. "All right, try not to trip over your own feet, EJ," Mason teased. "Oh, haha," EJ shot back. "Just wait. I'll be the one scoring the winning touchdown while you're still figuring out which direction to run in. As long as it leads me to the direction of your mom's house, then I'm good, bro." Mason fired back. Jordy and EJ went to grab each other's flag and ended up in a sprawling heap on the ground. EJ managed to untangle himself, glaring at Jordy. "You're a hazard, man." Meanwhile, Lavinia and I darted towards the other side. I spotted an opening and went for it, but Lavinia's foot hooked around mine, sending us both to the ground. She ended up on top of me, our limbs tangled awkwardly. I felt my face heat up, and for a second all I could do was stare into her eyes. Lavinia's entire body was pressed up against mine, and my throat went dry. "Enjoying the view down there?" Lavinia asked, raising an eyebrow with a smirk. I quickly helped her up, my face still flushed. "Just making sure you're comfortable," I said, trying to play it cool. The game was less about winning and more about the ridiculousness of our attempts. As the sun set, we finally called a truce, collapsing onto the grass, laughing and breathless. "Oh, I think I broke something," EJ complained with a groan. "I second that," Jordy replied. "You good, Mason?" "Shut up," Mason said, staring up at the sky. Everyone else had left the field by then. It was about midday when the game finished, but we decided to stay before lunch. I sat beside my friends, still smiling from their antics. As I scanned the field, I saw no signs of Skylar, and wondered if he'd been playing the game. The likelihood of that was slim, but I was still curious as to where he was. I rubbed my face and sighed. I was a total ass to him for no reason. I'd have to find some way to make it up to him. "I'm going to take off," I said, then stood, dusting off my shorts. "Where are you going?" Lavinia asked, shielding her eyes from the glare of the sun. I need to call my dad. I forgot to check in yesterday, you know how he is," I lied. "Okay." Lavinia chewed on her lower lip. "I'll see you for dinner?" I felt my face warm and I nodded, then started walking away. "What? No sympathy for me? I'm heartbroken," EJ whined, inching closer to her. "Did something bad happen to you? Or are you just naturally this irritating of a person?" I heard Lavinia bite back and I stifled my laughter. "I'm all natural, baby," EJ purred, and Lavinia shoved him off. A large part of me wished I could have stayed, but I was kind of worried about Skylar. I never meant to be such a dick to him, especially when I knew he didn't have anyone else to eat lunch with. I was just trying really hard to impress Lavinia, and having him around would kill that for me. Maybe I should explain that to him, just so he didn't hate me so much. I opened the cabin door and saw Skylar on the floor, his back pressed up against the bed while he was playing a video game. His shoulders were hunched in a way that I knew he was pissed at me, and I sighed. I slumped on the bed next to him and sat in silence for a while. Skylar ignored me in favor of killing zombies and other alien creatures. Chewing on my lower lip, I debated what I should say to him and wondered if he'd even care anyway, but decided to take a shot. Look, I rubbed the back of my neck. I'm sorry about the cafe, I panicked. You seem to be doing that a lot, Skylar bit out, especially when it comes to those assholes. Irritation sparked within me. Don't call them that. But they can call me a loser and make fun of me? Skylar spat. Even earlier, your friend Mason tried to... I know they aren't perfect, but they're my friends, Skylar, I pleaded with him. I feel like we don't have anything in common anymore. Skylar leapt to his feet, his hands curled into a fist, nostrils flaring. Well, whose fault is that? He yelled at me. When I try to talk to you, all you want to talk about is freaking football, or something those idiot knothead jocks said. They make fun of me constantly, and you say nothing about it. Guilt squirmed in my belly. Crap. He wasn't wrong. I was a dick to him, and for no reason other than the fact that I was trying to impress Lavinia. I'm sorry. I tugged on his wrist, trying to get him to calm down. My thumb brushed over the long scar that ran down his wrist. I'm sorry, I get it. I get the douchebag of the year award. More like the century, Skylar muttered. He relaxed and sat down next to me on the bed. I just don't get what you see in them. Their brain capacity is severely lacking. I chuckled at that. I don't know, they just get me. I really want to make it to WEU and join the Granite Peak Gladiators. They've won the national championship 3 years in a row, and their quarterback threw for over 2,000 yards last season. Their defense only allowed an average of 10 points per game. Playing for the Gladiators would mean training with the best, getting scouted by NFL teams, and maybe even securing a future in pro football. It's everything I've dreamed of. Skylar sighed. I get that, but does it have to be with those baboons? And don't even get me started on EJ. True, but he's got some serious skills on the field, I countered. Sure, if you consider running in circles and tripping over nothing as skills, Skylar said. Honestly, watching him try to catch a pass is like watching a squirrel on caffeine. I couldn't help but laugh. You know, you'd be great at roasting people professionally. I'll think about it in my next life, Skylar replied, then flopped back down on the bed. You don't need them to make it, you never did. I'm sure if they collectively put all their brain cells together, they wouldn't even equal a fraction of greatness. Like I said, they're my friends. It's hard to explain, but I don't want to lose them either. But losing me is okay, Skylar scoffed. Whatever. I didn't say that. Not in so many words, Skylar replied. I see the way you look at me like I'm... He gritted his teeth. I'm not like them and I never will be. Either you accept that about me or you don't, Hunter. I swallowed hard around the knot forming in my throat. He was right. I was the one with the problem. Skylar had always been like this. Fine. How about until I make it to nationals? We can still be friends, but I don't think you should hang out with us. I'm not saying it to be rude, Yeah, I think that might be better. Skylar went very quiet. Then his pale blue eyes turned to mine. Will you still be my friend in the meantime? The sheer desperation in his voice startled me. Damn, was I that horrible to him that he doubted that I would stop being his friend? The question to that was obvious. I knew I'd been a total ass, but this was beyond next level. Of course, I said right away with pure conviction. We're brothers, no matter what, Skylar, I promise. Skylar looked doubtful, but his face smoothed out in a neutral expression. Whatever. I'll be a CEO, and EJ will be a fat janitor has been. That's usually how things end up in the movies, so I don't understand why it can't be real life. I scoffed a laugh. Sure. Good luck with that fantasy. Skylar eyed me. You too. So Lavinia, eh? I felt my face burn. Shut up. She's hot, in an objective way, but she looks more like a shark than anything else, Skylar mused. I also heard that she and EJ... She's a good person, I interrupted. That's all I care about. Plus, I heard she wants to be on the squad as head cheerleader, so it's only natural I try to make my move. Right. Natural, Skylar scoffed. Whatever. I won't pretend to know ape mating rituals, but I wish you the best of luck in your endeavors. I chuckled and wrapped my arm around his head, bringing him into a tight hug. Thanks, Sky. I needed that. Skylar flushed and pulled away. Anytime. Just remember, no matter what, don't let those guys turn you into one of them. You're better than that. I smiled, feeling a little lighter. I'll keep that in mind. So, how about a game of Grand Theft Auto? My mouth curved into a smile. You're on. Skylar and I were huddled in front of the TV, the intensity of our Grand Theft Auto game filling the room. We traded insults back and forth, laughing way too loudly until my sides were splitting. Every time one of us messed up, the other would pounce with a sarcastic comment. You drive like my grandma, Skylar jeered, narrowly dodging a virtual pedestrian. Your grandma must be an undercover stunt driver then, I shot back, my fingers flying over the controller. Hours flew by in a blur of laughter and digital chaos until a knock on the door interrupted us. I shoved Skylar, whose face was red from laughing so hard, and ordered him to answer it. He stumbled to his feet, still chuckling, and opened the door to reveal Mason, EJ, Jordy, and Lavinia standing there. Hey, are you coming to eat dinner? Mason asked, looking between us. I froze, then glanced back at Skylar. The laughter had died down and he was suddenly quiet, no longer smiling. Yeah, I'll be there in a second. I grabbed a clean shirt and quickly changed, avoiding his eyes. I'll see you later. Skylar was frowning, but he nodded. See ya. I slammed the door shut and forced a smile to my friends. As we headed out, guilt gnawed at me. I should have asked Skylar to come with me, but then... Lavinia smiled at me, and all thoughts of Skylar fled my head. Chapter 3. Hunter Davis. Want to come to the forest with us later tonight? Lavinia asked. Lavinia and I were hiking with the rest of the camp. The Texas sun was beating down on my neck, making me sweat. The trail was dusty, and we had to watch out for rocks and cactus. I felt my face get warm whenever Lavinia looked at me, but I tried to play it cool. The trees were tall and provided some shade, but mostly it was just freaking hot. We could hear birds singing and see lizards darting across the path. Every now and then, Lavinia would smile at me, and my heart would race. It was hard to focus on the trail with her around. What will we be doing in the forest? I asked. Lavinia kinked a brow. Wouldn't you like to know? How about it's a secret? I won't tell you unless you agree to come. And if I don't? I said teasingly. I'll make you, Lavinia responded, grinning at me. I pressed my lips together, just about to respond when EJ waved us over. Come on, slow pokes, he called. Lavinia rolled her eyes. I hate that guy. I stared at her. Seriously? He's so freaking annoying. I don't even know why Mason hangs out with him, Lavinia muttered. Sure, he's a great CB, but his personality is crap. His jokes are so lame and he's super pervy. Ugh. She made a gagging noise in the back of her throat and I laughed. He isn't that bad, but yeah, I can tell him to back off if it bothers you so much, I told her, my expression turning serious. No, I'm good. Just stay close to me and everything will be fine. She beamed up at me, then linked our arms together. My entire face burned, but I didn't let go and neither did she. The entire hiking trip. Mason and Jordy kept sending me knowing looks, but I noticed EJ had gone suspiciously quiet. We headed back to the camp, and I immediately went back to my cabin to relax and wind down until dinner time. The minute I opened the door, I saw Skylar tucking that same magazine behind his pillow. His face was flushed and sweaty, even though I knew he didn't go anywhere. I eyed his pillow, wondering if I had time to screw with him or just let it go. "Hey." "Hi," I responded. "Meh, better to let it go. I was too tired anyway. You should have come. Exercise won't kill you." Skylar smirked. "Yeah, but why take the chance? Did you know that about 2,000 people a year get hurt exercising? I might become a statistic trying to lift a dumbbell." I snorted. "Yeah, whatever." I flopped on my bed, staring up at the ceiling. "What does it mean when a girl links your arms?" Skylar went quiet for a moment. "That... she wants to link arms? I'm serious." "I don't know," Skylar said, flinging his arm in the air. "I know less about girls than I know about the entire species of deep-sea anglerfish." I rolled my eyes. "Never mind. Forget I asked." Skylar inched over to my bed, twiddling his thumbs. "So, I guess linking arms is something akin to second base?" I laughed, shoving his arm. "No, she just... I don't know. She linked my arm and never let go, like the entire hike. It was... amazing." "Who knew?" Skylar squeaked. "Well, maybe you should do something nice for her." "Really? Like what?" I asked, turning onto my stomach to stare at him. Skylar's entire face flushed. "Ugh, I don't know. Girls like flowers. You could pick her one. Or maybe get her some candy from the vending machine. I know a can of Coca-Cola is your kryptonite." "Great idea," I said dryly. "Nothing says I care like sugar water and wilting daisies. She'll be swooning in no time." Skylar shifted his feet. "It was just a suggestion. And not a bad one, I thought, turning it over in my mind. Maybe sweet and simple was the best way to go. It wasn't like Lavinia didn't get crap from guys all the time, but I wanted it to be special. I knew she was incredibly smart, and she expressed wanting to study law when we reached WEU. I mean, the worst-case scenario is she calls you a creep and never speaks to you again. So I think it's worth a try," Skylar muttered. I hummed, then flopped back down on the bed again. "Maybe you're right. I can head there now and meet them later tonight." "Sure." I got off the bed, pulling off my shirt and then my shorts, hurrying to get dressed. I went for a quick shower, then did my best to smooth down my wild, sandy brown hair. I should have kept it in short ringlets that framed my face. I don't know why I let it grow out so long. Huffing a sigh, I went back into the bedroom, tidied up the mess that Skylar made, and then sprayed some cologne on my chest. "So, how do I look?" "Like the douchebag of the year," Skylar muttered. I barked a startled laugh. "Seriously?" "What? I am serious. Where did you get those clothes from? They look like they're from the Gap." "They are from the Gap," I said, suddenly feeling defensive. "What's wrong with it? It's cool." Skylar scoffed. "You look like a Mason Mini-Me. Very original." "Jealous much?" I said, rolling my eyes. "You know, maybe if your head wasn't so far up your own ass, you'd be able to make more friends and you wouldn't have to cling to me all the time." "Hold on. Let me write that down. I wouldn't want to forget such wisdom," Skylar spat. I stared at him, not sure what the hell we were even fighting about. He'd been so moody lately, and I wasn't sure why he was behaving like a total ass before my date with Lavinia. "Whatever. I'm going for a walk." He stood up and walked out of the cabin, slamming the door shut. I checked the time and realized it was still a few hours before dinner, so I sat down on the bed and booted up one of my favorite video games. I'd been playing video games for hours, totally lost in the action, when I suddenly realized I was going to be late meeting them. I grabbed my jacket and headed out the door for dinner. When I got to the cafe, I noticed it was empty. I remembered Lavinia mentioning something about meeting in the forest later on, and it clicked. I knew exactly where they'd be. I ran to the vending machine and bought a pack of sour peaches for Lavinia, then picked a bunch of wildflowers. I made a beeline for the forest. It was getting pretty dark, and I tripped over a few roots while I walked, trying to see where I was going. The forest was so quiet, except for some muffled voices in the distance. I thought I heard Skylar's voice among them. I picked up the pace, my heart pounding in my chest. When I finally reached the clearing, I saw a huge keg and a fire crackling in the middle. Whoa, cool. But then I noticed Mason standing in front of Skylar, looking all tough and mean. Mason took a threatening step towards Skylar, and I felt my stomach drop. Without thinking, I shouted, "Hey, what's going on?" All their heads turned towards me, and I frowned as I approached. "Tell your dog to back off," EJ muttered, but the vein in his neck throbbed. "What do you mean?" I turned to stare at Skylar, who was flushed red, glaring at all of them. "He said he would tattle on us if we told you about the keg, which is totally not cool," Lavinia replied, arms crossed over her chest. "You're underage," Skylar hissed. "If they find out..." "Which they won't, because you'll keep your goddamn mouth shut. I went through great pains to get this into the camp, so you better keep your damn mouth shut, loser, or you'll regret it," Mason snarled. "Oh, brilliant. Did you come up with that all by yourself?" "Newsflash, I'm not afraid of you or your steroid injections. Everyone knows you're just a muscle-bound show-off who needs a little extra help to look tough," Skylar scoffed. Mason's eyes flared with anger. "Oh, so you think you're so smart? Maybe if you didn't let your jealousy get the best of you, you'd see that it's not my fault you can't keep up without your little excuses." Skylar's face reddened. "And you think that makes you superior? Maybe if you spent less time juicing up and more time being a decent person, you wouldn't have to threaten others." "All right, enough," I said, stepping in between the two of them. "It's fine. I'll handle it." Mason's dark eyes fell to mine. "See that you do, Davis." They all walked away, and I rounded on Skylar. "What the hell are you doing? We were planning to have a party tonight. You can't just ruin it. What if someone gets too drunk and gets sick? You can't control these people. Then what? Everyone will find out, and you could be expelled from camp," Skylar said, his face flushing. "You've never drank alcohol before. What if it changes you and you turn into..." "It's a keg, Skylar, not a barrel of vodka," I flung back at him. "Jesus, I don't even know what the hell is wrong with you. Why are you trying to ruin my summer?" Skylar flinched. "I'm not. You're different around them, Hunter. I don't even recognize you anymore. You said, after I told you what happened to my foster father, that you wouldn't drink, that you wouldn't be like them." Foster father. I stared at him incredulously. How could he even link those two things together? So what if I had a couple of drinks? I wasn't anything like that horrible man. "So you think because I'll have a couple of drinks I'll start hurting you?" I barked back. Skylar shot me a strangled look, and I realized I said the words louder than I thought, and Mason and the others were still nearby, no doubt listening to our conversation. I sighed hard and lowered my voice. "Skylar, we're just having fun. I'm sorry you feel that way, but this isn't the same thing. You can't stop us from having fun." Skylar's mouth twitched. "This isn't fun. It's dangerous, stupid, reckless. Oh my God!" I almost screamed. I scrubbed hard at my face, wishing I could grab Skylar and shake him. "When did you become such a freaking loser?" Skylar looked like he'd been slapped. Crap. His entire face flushed red and his chin wobbled. "Wow, I'm in awe. You should really consider a career in stating the obvious." He turned and walked away without another word, disappearing into the forest. Mason clapped a hand on my shoulder. I thought he'd never leave, his voice is like nails on a chalkboard. "Flamer," EJ scoffed. "Do you think he'll tell anyone?" I stared after Skylar, feeling a strange tightness in my chest. I shouldn't have said those things. I shouldn't have yelled at him like that. He was right. It was reckless to have a keg here where anyone could see and walk in on us. I should apologize. Tell him that I'm sorry. and that I never meant to break my promise and turn into his foster father who was a nasty drunk. Damn. I sighed, running a hand over my face. Hey! Lavinia touched my arm. Don't worry about it. Some kids are just prudes by choice. He'll get over it. I nodded, then realized I had crumpled the flowers in my hand while I was yelling at Skylar. Crap. Sorry. These were for you. Lavinia's entire face brightened and she took them from me. Sour peaches? How did you know? Skylar told me. I swallowed around the blockage in my throat. She linked my arms and steered me towards the keg. Forget about him, Lavinia said, then leaned up against me. I want to hear all about your plans for WEU. I grinned and Mason poured me a drink. The first sip almost made me gag, but when I saw how other guys didn't even blink at it, I kept drinking. Yeah. I forced a smile as she launched into a triad about the cheerleading squad and pretended to listen. However, my gaze kept straying off to the forest in the direction where Skylar had walked off. Skylar ratted us out. I stood there frozen with shock as I sat in the director's office while he spoke to my father over the phone and told him what I'd done. The threat of expulsion hung like a guillotine over my head, but in the end the director was used to these types of antics, and we all got off with a stern warning never to do it again. Rage quickened my blood, and I was practically boiling with it the second the director set me free. The others were waiting for me in stony silence, and we headed to our clearing in the forest in order to speak freely. Mason was so mad he was pacing like a bull. That damn reject got me grounded for a week! A week! He smashed his fist into the tree trunk. I'll kill him! My parents are going to skin me alive when I get back, Geordie said, his knees practically shaking. Oh man, why did he have to go and tell on us? We weren't hurting anyone. You need to get your boy in check, Mason snarled at me, getting in my face. You think I haven't tried? I shot back. I don't know why he would do something so stupid. He just needs to be taught a lesson, EJ replied. What lesson? What were they talking about? He's just pissed off at me, I said, not liking the direction of the conversation. He's harmless. Just leave him alone. I'll talk to him. Because that worked out so well the last time, Lavinia said, giving me a bored expression. Come on, Hunter. He hates you just as much as he hates us. That's why he told on us. He's a goddamn rat! Mason spat with so much force I startled. You better keep that jockstrap away from me. He punched the tree so hard that the bark went flying, and then he stormed off. My brow furrowed as I stared after him, wondering why Mason seemed more upset than the others. It's his dad, Lavinia replied, answering my unasked question. He's the district attorney of Texas. If he finds out Mason is doing anything illegal, he'll be in big trouble. Her hazel eyes met mine. Not just grounded, like lock you in prison trouble. His dad wouldn't really do that, would he? I asked. Lavinia shrugged. I've only met him once and I was almost shaking. He's scary, just tell your poodle Skylar to back off. This isn't a game. If Mason's dad gets angry enough, he'll pull him from the football team. Crap. That was a fate worse than death, especially since Mason lived and breathed the game, the same way I did. I nodded. Don't worry. I'll talk to him. Lavinia looked doubtful but shrugged and walked away with the others. Damn, Skylar, I seethed. Why did he have to screw everything up? What the hell was wrong with him? Why couldn't he just shut up and keep quiet like the rest of them? I gritted my teeth and stormed toward the direction of my cabin. I slammed open the door, my anger bubbling over. My fists were clenched at my sides as I stormed in, ready to let Skylar have it for spilling the beans. The room was dim, but I could see Skylar sitting on his bed, trying to shove a magazine under his pillow as I walked in. Without a second thought, I marched straight over to him and yanked the magazine out from beneath the pillow. Skylar yelped, "Hey!" and tried to leap up to snatch it back, but I was faster. I held the magazine high, ready to let him have it with a nasty retort. But as I stared down at the magazine, my anger fizzled into shock. The images on the cover were of dropped the magazine as if I'd been scalded. Skylar's face was flushed so red he looked like a tomato. He was stammering, speaking so fast that his words seemed to blend together. I didn't hear a sound. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. All the things he said came rushing back to me in a torrent of rain. "Girls are like a different species to me," he'd said. Those lingering looks I'd ignored whenever I got changed. Or how his face flushed every time we locked eyes, or I stared at him longer than necessary. "It's not what you think. I was going to tell you. Don't hate me, please." Skylar was babbling, but there were genuine tears brimming in his pale blue eyes. He was trembling so hard, wringing his hands together. I swallowed around the dagger in my throat and stared at him as if I'd seen him for the first time. The more I looked at him, the more I realized that it was probably true, and something Skylar desperately wanted to keep from me. I gave him one last look before I walked out. Chapter 4. Hunter Davis. Sweat dripped down my face as I got ready to kick again. I focused on the ball and swung my leg with all my strength. The football soared high and I felt a sharp pain in my leg, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Images of that magazine came into my mind, flooding me with a revulsion that twisted my stomach. Skylar was... I choked back the words. No. I didn't want to think about it. The whole concept of it was absurd. My mind ran on a loop how many times I'd seen him tuck that magazine away, like it was some sort of prized treasure, like it was precious to him. God. I almost doubled over. Each kick was harder than the last. I lined up, took a deep breath, and kicked the football with all my might. Felt like there wasn't enough space to move, and my heart started pounding really fast. I was scared, but I knew I couldn't stop. I took a deep breath and kept going, even though everything felt too close. Skylar was going to ruin everything for me. I could see it. The horrific sneer in Mason's eyes are worse, EJ and Jordy. If anyone on my team even suspected I was anything other than straight, my entire world would crumble before it even had a chance. Panic made my hands clammy with sweat, but I powered through. I went harder than ever before, trying to drown out the hammering of my heart and growing anxiety that threatened to suffocate me. What the hell am I doing to do? Skylar couldn't be like that. I'd spent a lot of my time defending him against Mason and the others. Irritation sparked in my chest. How dare he do this to me, when I was so close to getting everything I've ever wanted? And Lavinia, she'd never look at me ever again if she found out about this. She'd hate me. She'd think I was sick. And wrong. Just like Skylar. I kicked the ball so hard that my cleats slid on the grass and I skidded, nearly toppling over, but I managed to catch myself at the last minute. I was breathless with rage, trembling from the force of it. Skylar was my best friend, and I had no idea he was that way. I curled my hands into fists, gritting my teeth so hard I thought my jaw would snap. He'd ruin it all just for spite, just like what he did when he ratted on Mason and the others. I gasped out loud breaths, my heart thundering in my ears. I had no idea what to do, who to turn to. My father wouldn't stand for it. He'd grown up in a Christian household and would probably kill Skylar for his impure thoughts alone. I forced myself to calm down, to think rationally, but for some reason I couldn't. All I kept thinking about was how everything was about to change, and how I wasn't in the least bit ready for it. I ran a hand through my wild, sweaty, sandy-brown curls and sighed through my nose. Crap. It was almost after 4 in the morning. I slowly began picking up the balls scattered around the field one by one, focusing solely on the task. At night, the old camp stadium was a ghost town. The metal bleachers creaked in the wind, and the field was uneven with patches of tall grass. The scoreboard was frozen with an old score, and the place smelled like wet grass and dirt. It was lonely but perfect for late-night practice. The guys liked to come here sometimes when we could find time. and I was hoping to get in more practices as the season wore on. But now I didn't even know if that was a possibility anymore. I put the balls back into the shed and slowly headed back to my cabin. I didn't think. I'd forget everything I'd seen today, and hopefully Skylar would too, and God willing never acted on these urges he had. I opened the cabin door, not expecting Skylar to be awake. But there he was. He stood from the bed, his eyes red-rimmed beneath his glasses. He wore an oversized gray sweater that almost swallowed his scrawny frame whole. His blonde hair was a mess, sticking up at all angles as if he'd spent half the night running his hands through it. "Hunter," he squeaked, his voice cracking. I took a long look at him. His knobby knees, stick legs, and the red shorts he wore that fell just above his knees. He was shaking all over, and God, I hated him. I was so mad at Skylar that I couldn't see straight. My hands shook, and I had to take deep breaths to keep from yelling. Every time I thought about what he did, it felt like a fire was raging inside my chest. "Just go to bed," I barked at him. I went to take off my clothes and then froze. What do I do? Do I strip? What if he's watching me? The thought turned my stomach. Could I even be naked around him anymore? Disgust roiled through me and I gritted my teeth. I threw myself onto my bed and pulled the covers up to my chin, not daring to look back. I didn't care that I was sleeping in my sweaty clothes or that I was in desperate need of a shower. All I wanted to do was be away from Skylar. "I'm sorry," Skylar whispered in the dark, his breath hitching on a strangled noise. My chest clenched, but I ignored it. I had to. For both our sakes. I stopped talking to Skylar, ignored his attempts at conversation, ignored his pleading looks and acts of desperation as he approached me even in front of my friends. I moved strictly on autopilot, not thinking too deeply about anything. Everyone else noticed too, but the second EJ commented on it, I shot him a look so nasty that even he slammed his mouth shut. Mason watched, though, his cat-like eyes regarding me closely. I spent my free time on the field when I wasn't with the other campers. I threw myself into the game. It was all I lived for, all I could see. I ran sprints down the field, the noise around me fading away. There was nothing but my rage burning inside me. I hated Skylar for what he did to us. I didn't feel safe alone with him anymore and spent most of my time in cabin 9 with the other guys. I pumped my legs harder and faster, trying to escape my feelings. Guilt started to creep in, but I pushed it away. Skylar was my best friend. I should accept him, right? But then I thought about Lavinia and the others. What would they think if they ever found out? A knot formed in my stomach, making it hard to breathe past the ache crushing me. "Trouble in paradise?" a voice asked, and I skittered to a stop. Mason stood near a low-wired fence nearby, holding a can of beer. He sipped it, eyeing me in that knowing way that made my stomach flip. I huffed a breath and strode over to him. I swiped his beer and took a sip. "Help yourself," Mason muttered. I drained it and almost choked when it didn't go down right. "Easy there. You don't want to throw up." "I'm sure even my vomit tastes better than this crap," I replied, clearing my throat. "That's my dad's favorite brewskis you're talking about." "It tastes like piss," I muttered. "Do you have any more?" Mason's mouth curled into a smile. Mason and I sat on the old bleachers that creaked every time we moved. We were chugging down beers, and I was drinking faster and faster, trying to drown out my thoughts. Mason was quiet, just watching me with a steady look. I was too caught up in my anger about Skylar to say anything, so we didn't talk. The night air was cool against my skin as we stared out at the empty field. I knew Mason loved football just as much as I did. It was like our whole lives were about the game. I felt like a junkie who couldn't get enough of football, always craving the next fix, no matter how much I played. "So, what's on your mind, cowboy?" Mason drawled, taking another swig of his beer. "You've been stomping around like a mad bull most days." I stared off into the distance, seeing things that weren't really there. "It's like that first night," I said, my voice low. When the lights are on you, everything is so hot and blinding, your lungs cinching. You're hot and cold all at once. I took a deep breath, my grip tightening on the beer can. Then you're on the field, and you score. You win the game. You're on cloud 9. But then, everything comes crashing down around you. It's like you're up in the sky, feeling invincible, and then, suddenly, you're falling. It's just... I trailed off, the words stuck in my throat. The cool night air felt like it was closing in around me, the field stretching out endlessly in front of us. Mason didn't say anything. He just sat there, letting me work through the mess in my head. "Skylar's gay." The words burst out of me like a dam, and suddenly, I didn't know how to stop them. I felt unhinged by it all. I felt pure rage whenever I thought about Skylar. My stomach twisted and my eyes narrowed in anger. It was like a red-hot anger boiling up inside me, making it hard to focus on anything else. I just wanted to make him pay for what he did. "I know," Mason replied, almost as easy as breathing. I rounded on him. "You knew?" Mason scoffed. "Well, bless your heart," he replied, shaking his head. "The crush he has on you is bigger in Dallas. We all saw that a mile away, and I wondered how long it'd take for you to clue in." He shook his head, taking another drink. "He can't change it, you know. The queerness." He spat the word with revulsion. "Don't think you can straighten him out. Men like him will always be bent. Don't even try." I let the words wash over me, knowing they were true, but my eyes still pricked with tears. "What do I do? He's my best friend. I make new friends." Mason shrugged. "He's not going in your direction, Hunter. I've seen you play. You're going to make something of yourself. Do you really want someone like that dragging you down? Like an anchor?" I sucked in a sharp breath. Staring off into the distance, everything felt like a crushing void. I wanted to reach through it, to grasp it. Grasp something, but it slipped through my fingers like smoke. Dump Skylar? The thought was almost inconceivable because no matter what he was still my best friend, the person who knew me better than anyone ever could in this lifetime. I groaned, digging my palms into my eyes. "Look," Mason said, "we have a spare bunk. I was going to tell you when we first arrived, but you seem dead set on bunking with Skylar. It's yours for the rest of the summer." He patted my back and then got up. He stretched, then tossed his empty cans onto the grass. "The choice is yours." He left shortly after that, leaving me alone with nothing but the gaping darkness and my endless thoughts. I moved out the next day, packing my things in the dead of night and swiftly moving into Cabin 9 with the other guys. Mason, EJ, and Jordy welcomed me with open arms, and I pushed all thoughts of Skylar aside for the time being. The days at camp passed in a strange blur. We did hiking activities, swam, drank, and had bonfires. It should have been the best and most exciting time of my life. Lavinia looked at me more and sat beside me, her arm always looped around my bicep. She would stare up at me with honey eyes, her pink lip gloss making her lips look plump and delicious. Mason and Jordy would send me knowing glances, along with a few other guys who knew of her crush on me, but I was so freaking distracted I couldn't enjoy even a second of it, because Skylar was everywhere now. We didn't speak, but he made a point to sit across from me, so whenever I looked up, our eyes would lock. Guilt would squirm in my belly whenever I caught sight of his pale blue eyes, but then my rage would flare even hotter. I hated the sight of him. He just kept coming around, uninvited, unannounced, and it freaking grated on me. A part of me wanted to kill him, drown him in the lake nearby just so I could escape the sheer guilt I felt trying to eat me alive. I told him I'd spend the summer with him, that we'd always be best friends, and I had lied. I broke every single promise I ever made to him, because I found out what he is. God. I swallowed hard and turned my attention back to Lavinia, who was shooting me worried glances. Even now, as we sat crowded around the bonfire, the flames licking toward the sky, and I longed to be somewhere else, away from Skylar's piercing gaze as he sat across from me on a log by himself, his knobby knees hugged to his chest, his head low, pale eyes gazing into the fire. He had no right to look so damn pathetic, especially since I was the one that would suffer for this. I was the one who could lose everything. My hands fisted my jeans, gripping the fabric until my knuckles turned white. "Everything okay?" Lavinia asked. "Fine," I clipped, then went back to staring into the flames. Mason passed me a beer masked in a red cup, and I drank until the fire blurred, along with everything else around me. Campers left one by one shortly after that, but I wasn't ready to stop drinking. "After party?" I asked Mason. "Sure, let me just—" "I think you've had enough," Skylar said, and suddenly he was very close. I almost jerked back in surprise. I didn't even notice when he'd gotten up and was suddenly looming over us. I was shocked by his audacity, but then I saw the stubborn glint in his eyes and knew he wasn't going to give up. "You should head back to your cabin." "Or else what, Rat? Are you going to tattle on us?" EJ snarled. "I should," Skylar snapped. "You guys were drinking. I can smell it on you. You should all be expelled for doing that." "You freaking little bastard," EJ seethed. He leaped to his feet. "Do you know how much trouble my mom gave me because of your little dumbass stunt?" "I don't care," Skylar replied, and I was stunned by his boldness. "You shouldn't have been drinking in the first place. You're underage." "Who gives a flying F—" Mason raised his hand and EJ quieted immediately. Mason stood, his entire body a solid wall of pure muscle and corded veins. The action forced Skylar to take a step back. Mason's mouth curved, his slanted eyes making the shadows on his face more sinister. "What do you have against us anyway?" he drawled. "Ever since Hunter joined us, you've been trying to screw with us all summer." Skylar's nostrils flared, his face flushing red. "You guys are a bad influence. He's never gotten drunk before he met you. He never behaved like this." "Come now, Skylar. We all know that if anyone is the bad influence, it is you," Mason scoffed, circling him. "Can you blame Hunter for not wanting anything to do with your filth?" "Filth?" Skylar muttered dangerously low. "If I'm filth, then what does that make you? Everybody knows what your father does, how he hunts the people he doesn't like, how he destroys them. I see you aren't any different. You think people don't notice you're on performance enhancement drugs?" Skylar spat. "You're huge, which is freaking unnatural for a teenager your age, and nobody would be stupid enough to pass it off as a growth spurt when you were smaller than me less than 3 years ago. Your pupils are always dilated." Skylar's lips curled in disgust. "What's wrong, Mason? Can't keep up?" "And you," Skylar said, turning to EJ. "Do you think your mom popping enough prescription medication like their Tic Tacs can hide the fact that your father's an abusive bastard? That he uses her like a human piñata? Then forces her to parade around charity events with 2 black eyes? You have 2 older brothers and none of you lift a finger to help her. Cowards!" Skylar's nostrils flared. "Not to mention you," he rounded on Jordy. "You know why they keep you around, right? It's because you pay for everything. But when push comes to shove, you'll take the fall for everything, won't you, Jordy? Just like the good little dog that you are." Skylar scoffed, then slowly turned his gaze to Lavinia. "And you, the doe-eyed harlot. You went from Mason to EJ, and now you want to dig your hooks into Hunter. What's wrong? 2 guys aren't good enough for you. You have to keep hopping to the next dick." Lavinia was breathless with rage. They all were. I sat there shocked, my jaw slowly opening at all the crap Skylar unearthed in one single night. How did he know all of this? How did he know that Mason took performance enhancement drugs? Or that Lavinia had slept with Mason and EJ? Then it struck me that Skylar always liked to watch people. It would be easy for him to pick up pieces of information and put everything together. The beer from earlier curdled in my stomach and I dropped Lavinia's hand. Mason laughed. It was a vicious, ugly sound. "Oh man, I knew I didn't like you for a reason." His jaw worked, and I could tell he was furious. Skylar had cut them open, unspooled all their secrets, and laid everything bare. It was startling to realize that the guys I'd spent the last few months with, I barely knew anything about them. Interesting little facts you have there. It's just too bad you're just a no-name dweeb. Mason punched him. A sickening crunch rang out as his fist smashed through Skylar's glasses, shattering the glass as it concaved around his fist. Skylar wailed. The sound fractured my bones, and I was on my feet in seconds, racing toward him, but Geordie pounced on me, locking my arms around my back. Skylar crumpled to his knees, clutching his bloodied face with his trembling hands, sobbing so loud my heart clenched. Jesus, there was blood everywhere. "Tie him up," Mason muttered. EJ hauled Skylar to his feet, despite his cries and thrashing, and Lavinia used the ropes they had for the logs and tied them around his chest and ankles. The glass embedded in Skylar's cheeks and around his eyes glistened wickedly, each shard slicing into his skin as blood soaked his face and sweat, running in rivers down his body. Pieces were lodged in his neck and collarbone, turning him into a living nightmare. His screams were almost unbearable, and the sight of him made bile surge up my throat as I wrestled with Geordie to get to Skylar. Then Lavinia bent near the fire and picked up a log, still bright and red, sizzling with embers. "Harlot, you said?" Lavinia whispered, her hazel eyes flashing with maliciousness. "Let's see who's the harlot now." She raised the log and pressed it into his skin. My vision went white with anguish. Skylar's eyes bulged, and then a scream burst from his lips. "Keep him quiet!" Mason barked. EJ shrugged off his shirt and stuffed it into Skylar's mouth. I saw red. I thrashed hard against Geordie, bucking like a damn bronco. "Stop it!" I screamed at them. "What the hell are you doing? A blunt object smashed against the side of my head, sending a jolt of pain through my skull. The world around me spun violently, and the blinding light became a chaotic blur. Sounds turned into a distant roar as my vision faded to darkness, swallowing everything until I was engulfed in an overwhelming blackness. Chapter 5. Hunter Davis. I woke up in a sterile hospital room that reeked of cigarette smoke and antiseptics. My throat felt dry, like I hadn't had water in days. My temple pounded insistently, and when I tried to move, white-hot pain stabbed through my ribcage, making me gasp. Where am I? What happened? Where's Skylar? Images of the previous night flashed before my eyes, and I almost hurled. Skylar. He was hurt. They tied him to a tree, and they used the log to... I nearly bit back a scream in agony. How could they do that to him? Just because he knew a few of their secrets, they wanted to kill him for it. "Hello," a voice said from several feet away. I turned my head slowly and saw Mason sitting on a bright red plastic chair, dressed in a hospital gown. The sight of him nearly made me recoil. His face was a mess. 2 large black circles ringed his wide eyes, and his nose was completely busted, taped with gauze and crusting over with dried blood. My stomach backflipped. He was smoking. In a hospital room. While looking right at me, defiance etched in his face. Since when did Mason smoke? I thought about Skylar's steroid comment and realized I knew almost nothing about these people that I was so ready to ditch Skylar over. Damn, all of this had been a mistake. I should have just listened to him. Now I didn't even know where he was or if he was okay. Tears pricked my eyes and I took a sharp breath. "Mason?" I croaked, incredulous. "What are you doing here? And why are you smoking?" He shrugged nonchalantly, taking another drag from his cigarette. "Had to see if you'd wake up, didn't I?" He exhaled a cloud of smoke, making me cough. "As for the smoking, well, old habits die hard." I tried to sit up, but the pain in my ribs made me wince and lie back down. "What happened to you?" He stared at me for several moments. "You don't remember?" It wasn't a question, but I shook my head anyway. He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. What didn't happen? Got into a bit of a scuffle, let's say. But enough about me. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, I admitted. Skylar, do you know where he is? Mason's expression darkened. Skylar's fine. He's been looking for you. They wouldn't let him in here, though. Strict visitor policy or something. He'll be up soon. I swallowed hard. Nothing about his words sounded right. Skylar had been badly hurt. How could he be the one looking for me? I was so confused, but talking was making my head hammer. My vision swam as I struggled to stay lucid. You guys heard him. Mason's lip curled. Well, he heard us right back. Rest now. We'll see what you remember by tomorrow. Every breath sent a sharp, searing pain through my ribcage, making my vision darken and dance with black spots. The agony was so intense that my head felt like it was being crushed in a vice, each throb echoing in my skull. Mason stood, leaning over me. Hopefully you won't remember a damn thing. What's that supposed to mean? My eyes slipped closed once again and sleep claimed me. Days passed in a blur, a haze of pain and medication. My ribcage flared with agony whenever I moved, but the heavy dose of medication kept me in a stupor most of the time. Time became meaningless, a series of disjointed moments stitched together by the persistent throbbing in my ribs and the foggy lethargy of the drugs. Every now and then my dad would visit. His presence was a comforting constant, but our conversations were fragmented, snippets of words exchanged between my groggy bouts of consciousness. He'd sit by my bedside, his hand warm and reassuring on mine, talking to me in soothing tones. But my mind was elsewhere, consumed by a gnawing fear. Skylar. No one had told me anything about him, and the lack of news was driving me to the edge. The worry for his safety hung over me like a dark cloud, refusing to dissipate. Each time I opened my eyes, the desperation to see him grew stronger, mingling with the pain and forming a relentless ache in my chest. I tried to ask my dad about Skylar, but my words came out slurred and disjointed. He'd give me a sympathetic look, gently brushing my hair back, but his silence only deepened my anxiety. I needed to see Skylar to know he was okay. The fear for him was a constant undercurrent, cutting through the drug-induced fog and stabbing at my heart. Fire, Lavinia, E.J. Jordy and Mason. All their faces flashed before my eyes. Since Mason came, nobody else visited it. I heard from my father that their wounds had been superficial at best, and that left me puzzled. How is it that Mason, Skylar, and me all had the worse wounds? What did they do to us that night? Damn it, why couldn't I remember? One night, as I drifted in and out of sleep, I caught a glimpse of my dad talking to a nurse. Their voices were low, their expressions serious. I struggled to stay awake, to hear what they were saying, but the medication pulled me back under. As darkness claimed me once again, a single thought echoed through my mind. I had to see Skylar. I had to know he was safe. I woke again to hushed voices in my hospital room. They won't talk. It's best to settle before things get real nasty. A man in a dark suit was instructing my dad, who nodded fervently. I struggled to sit up, notifying them that I was awake. "Hunter!" My dad rushed to my side. "Just sit still for a moment. I'll grab the nurse." "Water," I rasped. My throat felt like sandpaper. My dad handed me a glass of water and I drank greedily. "What are you talking about? Where's Skylar?" I demanded once my thirst was quenched. "This is Mr. Mickelson from Mickelson Law Firm," my dad introduced us. "Howdy, son," Mr. Mickelson said. He didn't shake my hand, but his brown eyes were warm and expressive. His black suit stretched across his potbelly, and his hair was cropped short around his receding hairline. "I was just speaking to your father about your situation here, and it ain't looking too good from where I'm standing." "Wait," I cut in. "What situation?" My dad stared at me and I felt like I was missing something. "We spoke about it yesterday, Hunter. Do you remember?" I tried to think about it, but every time I did, pain flared in my temple, making it almost impossible. "No. Ugh, it hurts." I clutched my skull, trying to will the pain away. Okay. Don't hurt yourself. Take it easy, son. We'll go over it again. The doc said this might happen, my dad said. From what we heard, you guys were out in the woods, drinking. Skylar was upset you weren't spending time with him and he attacked you guys, then attacked himself with the fire log. What? I stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Skylar attacked them? I almost choked on a laugh. Dad, they said what? That Skylar... It was too ridiculous for words. And yet, they'd all collectively thrown Skylar out to the wolves. Why would they do that? I shook my head. That's not true. They attacked him first. They hurt him. Dad, there was so much blood. I was so scared. They almost killed him. I know, son. I know, but... My dad's face turned hard and he gripped my hand. What do you remember? Tell me what you remember, and so help me God, I'll burn every last one of them. White hot needles stabbed my eyes every time I tried to think too deeply about it. I remembered the fight. What Skylar said. I remembered the rage flickering in their eyes. The hate. I remember Mason punching Skylar and them tying him to a tree. After that, it was all blank. I don't remember anything. Tears burned my eyes and then trailed down my cheeks. I couldn't remember anything. I'm sorry, Dad, I can't remember. I don't know what they did. A sob burst through and I felt almost hysterical with it. How is it that I didn't remember what they did to my best friend? God, Skylar must hate me. I curled my hand into a fist, wishing like hell I could get out of here. How's Skylar? Tell me. How is he? My dad sighed. He's hurt. Real bad. They put fire to his chest and arms. The glass was embedded into his cheeks. He needed 16 stitches. Thankfully, he's not blind. His mouth thinned into a hard line. He's a mess, Hunter. He needs you. We both do. If there's anything you can remember, anything at all, let us know. I told him bits and pieces of the beginning, but the lawyer was already shaking his head before I could finish. The problem there, son, is that you were drinking. They'll say you aren't a credible witness. Skylar provoked them. That much was clear from your statement and theirs. I think it might be best to settle. Mr. Reed has given you a generous offer. Hunter can take the rest of the summer to recuperate, then in a few years head to WU in the fall. Children fight all the time, Mr. Mickelson laughed. Mr. Mickelson, my dad snapped. My son is sitting in the hospital with 5 broken ribs and a fractured skull. Don't you dare tell me this was nothing but a simple fight. We both know better. I understand that, Mr. Davis, Mr. Mickelson replied smoothly, not missing a beat. But consider what we're up against. My mama used to say believing in fairy tales is like holding on to a Texas sunset. And as your counsel, I would not lead you astray. Jack Reed is the district attorney. Jordy Snowall's father is the sheriff. The case is already closed, and it's going to be hell trying to get them to reopen it. These kids are underage, and I know I'm going to get slapped with all kinds of child protection laws if I even think about breathing in their directions. Best leave things be. Skylar isn't dead. He'll heal. So will Hunter. It ain't right. It ain't fair. But Redstone Creek ain't the place for justice. If Hunter wants to reopen the case when he's older, then I'll be right there with him, and I'll march down to the steps of the sheriff's office and slap big old Joe with a search and seizure warrant myself. However, that isn't today's battle. My dad's nostrils flared with rage, and he turned his face away, jaw clenched. Jordy's father was the sheriff? How come I never knew that? I sat there for several moments, willing my thoughts to slow down. I needed to see Skylar. We'd deal with this together. Can I see him? My dad nodded. The nurses moved around me, efficiently unhooking my IVs and securing them to a metal pole. My dad spoke to them quietly, asking for a robe, and soon they were helping me out of bed. My legs wobbled beneath me, and I clutched the edges of the bed for support, my heart hammering in my chest. Skylar. I desperately needed to see him. The robe felt scratchy against my skin as they draped it over my shoulders. I took a tentative step, and pain shot through my broken ribs, making me wince. Each step down the hall felt like an eternity, every movement sending screeches of agony through my chest. My dad walked beside me, his hand steadying my arm, offering silent support. The hallway stretched on endlessly, my breath coming in shallow gasps as we finally reached Skylar's room at the end. The nurse opened the door, and I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I might find. I walked in, my eyes immediately seeking out Skylar. My heart stopped the moment I saw him. He was turned onto his side, facing away from me, but from my vantage point, I could see his entire head wrapped in gauze. I lifted a trembling hand to cover my mouth. "Skylar!" I croaked. God, what did they do to him? Skylar didn't turn, even though I knew he was awake. I wanted to rush over to him, take him into my arms, and beg for his forgiveness. This was all my fault. He told me to stay away from them. He told me they were bad news, but I didn't listen. "Skylar, please," I pleaded. I hurried toward the bed, going as fast as my ribs could allow. There were 2 slits in the gauze, exposing Skylar's pale blue eyes, but the normal light in them had been completely snuffed out. Jesus Christ! I reached out to touch him, but he flinched away from me. "Skylar, My body was shaking so hard I couldn't see straight. "I'm sorry." A sob tore through my throat, and I wished like hell I could go back in time and stop all of this from happening. Skylar had been right about them the whole time. Lavinia was just using me. Mason, too. They just wanted someone around them that would make them feel better about themselves. I didn't see it. I didn't know what they were until it was too late, and Skylar suffered the consequences. Pain stabbed at my chest with each sob, and I sucked in harsh peals of breath, trying to calm down. Skylar's entire hands were bandaged. There wasn't a part of him that was completely covered besides his mouth and eyes. Nausea roiled through me when I realized Lavinia, EJ, and Jordy barely walked away with a freaking scratch. I should have killed them all for doing this to him. "What do you remember?" Skylar's voice pierced my thoughts. I swiped at my tears, trying to compose myself. His voice was surprisingly clear despite the bandages covering his face. I swallowed around the knot in my throat and turned to stare at him. "Nothing. But that doesn't matter. They hurt you. You'll pay for it." Skylar stiffened, his entire body clenched up, even his shoulders. I wanted to tell him to relax, press my hand into his shoulder blades like I used to, but that entire area was covered in gauze too. He turned his blue eyes onto me, but they were dead. Vacant. "Get out!" Shock skittered up my spine at the raw savageness of his words. In the years we've been friends, he's never once spoken to me like that. "What?" "Skylar!" I said, "Get out!" My dad touched my shoulders and steered me toward the door before I could respond. Skylar went back to staring out the window. I didn't want to leave him, but I knew he probably blamed me for everything that happened. He wasn't wrong. It was my fault. They were my friends who I defended, and I was the one who didn't listen to the truth. God, what have I done? My dad and the nurse took me back to my room, and I sat on my bed for a long time. "He's grieving," my dad said. "Just leave him be." I nodded, my throat constricting with emotion. I'd try again in a few days, and hopefully by then Skylar would want to speak to me. "What the hell do you mean gone?" My dad barked at Mr. Mickelson. "You're telling me a boy with almost 100 injuries just walked out and left?" I was just stepping out of the bathroom after my evening nap when I noticed my father pacing like a bull in our room with Mr. Mickelson there. "His foster family discharged him." "Discharged him!" My dad bit out. "How the hell could they do that? He could barely walk." "I'm sorry. It's out of my hands," Mr. Mickelson sighed. "Mr. Reed offered them a generous offer, and I guess they took it." "Took it?" My dad looked horrified. A wave of fear washed over me. What did that mean? His foster father was a bastard drunk who beat on him regularly. Why did Mason's dad give him the money? What were they thinking? Where's Skylar? My dad barked, his voice frantic. Where's my other boy? My heart clenched at the words, and I hobbled over to them, desperate for news of my best friend. My brother. Please tell us. What happened? Where is he? Mr. Mickelson sighed, scrubbing a hand over his face. I'm sorry. I heard they took the money and left town. The weight of his words hit me like a freight train. My knees buckled and I clutched at the nearest chair, feeling utterly gutted. The room seemed to spin around me, the sterile walls closing in as a sense of hopelessness washed over me. Skylar was gone. My ribs screamed with every shallow breath, but it was nothing compared to the ache in my heart. No, I whispered, my voice breaking. No, that can't be. Skylar wouldn't just leave. He wouldn't. My dad's hand was on my shoulder, steadying me as tears blurred my vision. We'll find him, he said softly. We won't give up. I sank into the chair, my body trembling, and let the tears flow freely. Chapter 6. Hunter Davis. 2 years later. I stood on the football field, taking a deep breath of the crisp morning air. The stadium lights were dim, but I could almost hear the roar of the crowds cheering. This year was going to be the best year of my life. I finally made it to WEU and was going to be the star quarterback. I felt excitement and nervousness, but mostly I was ready. At least I think I am. This was what I had dreamed of and worked so hard for. I clenched my fists, feeling the energy course through me. This was my moment, and I was ready for it. What the hell are you so happy about? Coach Sullivan grumbled, shoving a cigarette into his mouth and lit it up, his dark eyes scanning the field. Coach Sullivan, or Surly Sullivan as everyone called him, always looked grumpy. His face had deep lines, and he seemed to be frowning all the time. His dark eyes were sharp, like he could see right through you. I scoffed. What do you mean? We're about to have the first practice of the season. Aren't you excited about that? Excited about what? Looking after you snot-nosed brats? I have more talent in my entire pinky toe than the entire team does combined. My grin grew, used to Coach's surly attitude by now. Sure. That's yes, Coach, to you, brat. And don't let me hear about you slacking off, he spat. Now cut it out. It's giving me the creeps. I bit back my smile and continued to look out into the field. We didn't speak for a while, and I just let whatever I was feeling sink in. The years after high school had been a mess for me. The only thing that made sense was football. I had lost my best friend. My dad couldn't accept the fact that Skylar was gone for good and spent most of his free time looking for him. My expression dimmed when I thought about Skylar, but I shoved it away in favor of thinking about my freshman year at Wellington State University. Look, kid, Coach Sullivan said, his voice rough. I wanted to tell you before you got your skirts over your head, but I can see that ship has sailed. We're 4 guys short this year for the team. What? I said, turning to him. Impossible. You're telling me, Cinderella, Coach Sullivan said. I don't know what happened, but it seems there weren't enough tryouts. The rules have gotten stricter after we made state nationals last year, and there was that insignificant scandal about using performance enhancement drugs. Anyway, long story short, the dean isn't accepting anyone who isn't serious about playing. Scholarships notwithstanding, all add-ons have been cut, and since this town is small and stupid, everybody with talent has already signed up. I was struggling to comprehend what this meant. So, we can't play this season. He can't do this to us. Did I say that? Why is there so much wax in your ears? I said we were short players, not that we weren't playing. Coach Sullivan shook his head. Anyway, I've consulted the nearby reform school to see if they have any extras. I'm sorry, did you just say the nearby reform school? I spat out. Yeah, Edgewater. You heard of it? Most students have anyway. They say that's where nightmares come from. Only the worst of the worst are sent there, violent offenders and such. But the university is correlating with the students released there to give them a second chance out into society. Think of it like charity, kid. My brain felt like it was doing somersaults, the world around me becoming a dizzy haze as I tried to process what I just heard. Edgewater? What the hell possessed them to start partnering with them? I shuddered to think about it, but when it came down to it, not playing at all versus playing with known criminals wasn't so bad. How many guys will join our team? 4, Coach said, puffing out some smoke. Any more than that, and I think I'd lose my damn mind. I want you to take care of it. Keep in mind that these are violent offenders. They will have their parole officers on standby, and this is part of their initiation back into society, so try not to judge them too harshly. They're rough around the edges, but some of them have some real good talent. You've met them already? I asked. Of course I have, Coach snorted. I wouldn't ask them to join unless I was sure they could actually play. He gritted his teeth. Anyway, I want you to get the team together, Mason and the others, and find out their thoughts. Most of them won't like it, but it's either that or no football this year, which I'm sure won't go over well with anyone. Sure, no problem. Now hurry up and get dressed for practice. Your happiness sickens me. I huffed a laugh, then raced off to the locker rooms to get changed. I got ready for football practice in the changing rooms, the familiar smell of sweat and sports gear filling the air. I pulled on my practice gear, snug black pants with protective padding, a fitted orange and blue jersey with my proud number 1, and sturdy cleats that felt like an extension of my feet. I took a moment to check myself in the full-length mirror, taking in my reflection. After all these years, I had filled out a lot more. My shoulders were broader, and my sandy brown hair touched the nape of my neck, falling in loose ringlets. Cool auburn eyes stared back at me, eyes that had seen countless hours of practice and hard work. I pulled my hair into a ponytail, feeling the slight tug as I hurried to finish. Mason slapped me on the back, a playful grin on his face. Making yourself look pretty? No need on my account. I laughed, shoving his arm. Just trying to keep up with you, man. Whatever, Mason said, then tore off his shirt, exposing his rippling muscle. Over the years, he's gotten bigger, too. Are you coming over after practice? Sure, I said automatically. Everyone will be there? You know it, Mason said with a wink, then hurried to get dressed. Turning his back to me, I saw his jersey number 59 on proud display. EJ and Jordy were next to file in, frantically mumbling their apologies as they rushed to get dressed. We bumped fists as they dressed. EJ wore jersey number 49 and Jordy wore number 10. We all headed out to the football field together. The sun was shining and the grass smelled fresh and clean. I took a deep breath, feeling ready for anything. This was what I was born to do. Let's go, team! I shouted, leading the charge. We ran out onto the field, the crunch of our cleats against the turf echoing in my ears. All right, warm-ups first, I barked, clapping my hands. EJ, keep that line tight. Jordy, don't lag behind. We started with some stretches and then moved into running drills. I made sure everyone was in line, barking orders to keep them focused. Come on, pick up the pace. Let's move, move, move. The team pushed harder. We ran sprints, did high knees, and practiced quick turns. My heart pounded with excitement. This is what we're made for, I yelled, feeling the thrill of leading my team. We were ready for anything, and I knew this was where I belonged. Coach Sullivan called us over, his orange windbreaker with Granite Peak Gladiators printed on the back standing out against the green field. He looked as grumpy as ever, his eyes sharp and scanning each of us. All right, you potato sacks, listen up, Coach Sullivan barked, his voice carrying across the field. We've got 4 new players coming to our team from Edgewater. Hunter will explain later what that means. I want you all on your best behavior, including you, EJ. Hey! What did I do? EJ protested, looking genuinely confused. Especially you, EJ, you damn menace, Coach Sullivan shot back, pointing a stern finger at him. Now get back out there. Practice wrapped up in a few hours. I was catching my breath, wiping sweat from my forehead when my gaze drifted across the field. Lavinia was there, performing flips and dancing with the other cheerleaders. "You good?" Mason asked, breaking my trance. I jolted out of my daze and looked at him, a bit embarrassed. "Yeah, I'm good." We headed to the showers, and then Mason brought his Maserati out front, and we all climbed in. He put on some trap music from Drake, and I let my thoughts go as we headed to Mason's house. We pulled up to Mason's mansion, which looked like something straight out of a movie. It was huge and fancy, with tall columns and big, sweeping stairs, just like in Gone with the Wind. The front yard had perfectly trimmed bushes and giant windows. When we headed inside, we went down to the downstairs den. It was an awesome room with a big pool table in the middle, a comfy couch, and a huge 12-inch TV on the wall. There was also a bar where you could get snacks and drinks. It felt like the coolest place to hang out after practice. "So, you still pinning for that?" Mason asked, passing me a beer. The guy sprawled out on the couch, Jordy immediately flickering through the channels. He's lost most of his baby fat, and his build was more lanky and lean, perfect for running long distances. "Yeah, man. Kelly said Lavinia still talks about you," Jordy said, but his gaze was fixed on ESPN. "Nah, it's better off this way," I replied, taking a sip, not wanting to get into it. Mason shook his head. "You guys should just kiss and make up already. Lavinia is one of us, man. You ain't gonna find another girl out there like her. Besides, you've been together for forever. She still loves you, man. She says so all the time." I took a stuttering breath, ignoring how my hands shook around my can. The last remaining years of high school had been a whirlwind in more ways than one. I cleared my throat. "Did you hear what Coach said? We're getting 4 new players this year. I wanted to talk to you guys about it." EJ snorted. "About what?" He flicked through a magazine, propping his feet on the coffee table. "Who's the rejects that want to join our team? Coach says we didn't get enough tryouts because of the requirements this year. I pressed on, so we need 4 more guys to make up the difference or else we can't play." "Say what now?" Mason gaped at me. "Can't play? Well, who are these guys? Why is Coach making such a big deal out of it?" "They're from Edgewater." A heavy silence descended upon the room. I could see several emotions flickering over Mason's face at once before he smoothed it out. EJ looked shocked, and so did Jordy. "Oh, hell no," EJ snarled. "I'm not playing with a bunch of damn criminals. Coach is out of his mind. What if we get stabbed or worse?" "It's either that, or we don't play this year, dumbass," Mason snapped at him. "If we don't play, you can kiss your scholarships goodbye." EJ slammed his mouth shut. "Do we know who it is yet? Will we be safe?" Jordy asked. "Safe? From a bunch of wannabe thugs?" Mason scoffed. "Who cares? I dare any one of those assholes to try to attack me and see how far it gets them." "Easy for you to say," Jordy snorted. "Your dad probably put them there. It's not so easy for the rest of us." "Just shut up and keep to yourself," Mason barked. "They'll have no need to mess with you as long as you don't mess with them first. Same goes for you, EJ." "Hey, what did I do?" I laughed at their antics, shaking my head. "So, we good?" "We're good, man," Mason said, bumping my fist. "This is our year. We aren't going to let a few psychopaths ruin it for us." "Did he just say a few?" Jordy squeaked. Mason chucked a can of beer at Jordy's head. Thankfully, he caught it. "Turn it up. I want to see who's playing against who this season. My bet is on the Patriots." I left Mason's house, saying goodbye and heading out into the warm Texas evening. The bus ride back to my apartment near the campus was a long one, and the city lights began to blur together as my thoughts drifted. When I finally walked through the door of my apartment, the sight that greeted me made my heart sink. My dad was passed out on the couch, snoring loudly with the TV blasting some late-night news. Newspaper clippings were scattered all over the table, the headlines about missing person reports stark and unsettling. My throat clogged with emotions as I took in the mess. I quickly set to work, tidying up the table and carefully stacking the papers. I gently shook my dad awake, helping him to his feet and guiding him to bed. He mumbled incoherently, his eyes heavy with sleep, and I tucked him in as best I could. Once I was alone in my room, I sat down heavily on my bed. I thought of Skylar every day, every waking moment. I wondered where he was and if he was safe. I had come to terms with the fact that he was never coming back, and who could blame him? Even after he'd left, I swallowed hard around the knot in my throat. Mason and the others were still my friends, after they'd almost tortured Skylar to death. I didn't know what came over me. Maybe it was because I had no one else and Mason was just suddenly always there. But I took his advice and I just let everything that happened go. I went on with my life. I dated Lavinia. Hell, I even loved her at one point. But the pain of the past grew too much. I was sick of ignoring it. Sick of having dreams of Skylar's tortured face as he wailed into the night. Sick of Mason's smug smile. Sick of Lavinia's growing selfishness. She wasn't anything like I thought she would be, and then I realized the only reason she liked me was because I never asked her too many questions. I didn't dig too deep when it came to the past or the other guys she hung around with. For 2 years I'd worn this mask. I wore it so well I didn't even realize when the mask had become my face. I told myself it was all for the game, for WEU and the state championships. That was all that mattered to me now. Making it. I had to make it. Gritting my teeth, I fisted my jersey shorts, trying to ground myself. I had this stupid dream that if I finally made it, then Skylar would see me on TV, he'd come back to me. Come back to us. He'd be my brother again, and we could finally prosecute them all for what they've done. Without Skylar, my case was flimsy at best, but if we stood tall together, then nobody could stand in our way. My memories of that night still hadn't reappeared, but I was hoping that if Skylar returned, maybe he could say something that would jog my memory and help me to see the events from a different perspective. Sighing through my nose, I stood from the bed and hurried to get dressed. Tomorrow was a big day. I started my classes, and then I was sure Coach wanted me to meet the 4 new recruits. Then the season would start, and we'd have to work hard to put ourselves on the map. I had my entire life ahead of me, and sometimes it shattered my heart to think Skylar would never be a part of it. We pulled up to school in Mason's Maserati, the sleek car purring to a stop amidst the bustling crowds. Students were everywhere, chatting and laughing, their voices creating a lively buzz. I threw on my orange and blue varsity jacket, letting it flap proudly as I stepped out. I bumped fists with a few guys I knew, trying to keep the energy up. EJ was already making a scene, wearing ridiculous orange sunglasses and striking cheesy poses as he flirted with the girls nearby. He looked like a total clown, but that was nothing new. "When are you meeting the 4 rejects?" Mason asked, glancing at his watch. I checked the time, standing near the front of the school. "I don't know. Coach said they should be here soon. I should be at the front to welcome them." "Your funeral?" Mason muttered, then walked off with the other guys. "Don't be late for evening practice." I waited, scanning the incoming crowd. Soon, a rickety old school bus pulled up to the curb. It looked like it had seen better days, with graffiti scrawled all over the sides and one of the tires looking dangerously flat. The doors creaked open, and a steady stream of young adults started pouring out. A few gave me curious glances, but none of them stopped to talk. I kept waiting, checking my watch again. The minutes ticked by, and I was growing more irritated. If I didn't head to class soon, I'd be late. Gritting my teeth, I turned away from the crowd and headed to my first class. I was frustrated that the new guys hadn't shown up yet, but there was nothing I could do. The day passed quickly, so I went to evening practice a few minutes later to notify the coach that nobody had shown up. I spotted Coach Sullivan almost immediately. He was standing on the bleachers, talking to several students. However, the minute I got closer, I realized there was something different about these students. "Where the hell have you been?" Coach Sullivan barked. "They said they were standing out front waiting for you. What do you have? Wax in your ears? I told you to wait out front." I frowned. I did, and I didn't see anyone. "Bull!" Coach snapped. "Apologize to them and hurry to introduce yourself before practice. We wanted to start off on the right foot this season, Hunter." I clenched my teeth, irritation sparking within me. I was there, and judging by the looks on their haughty faces, they'd seen me, but didn't bother to stop when they got off the school bus. This was already getting off to a bad start. I apologize, my name is Hunter Davis. Meet your new offensive lineman, Tyrone Jackson, otherwise known as Ty, Coach Sullivan bid out. Ty was tall with a big build. He wore a hoodie with a sports team logo and loose jeans. He gave me a quick once-over and snorted. This here is Eddie Martinez, Coach continued, pointing to a short guy wearing a baseball cap on backward, a tank top, and shorts. Yo, Eddie said. You can call me Edge, fam. I come from the east side. Shut up, Coach deadpanned. He's your new tight end. Treat him with respect. This is Kevin K-Dog Harris, your new wide receiver. I regarded him for a few minutes, and he flashed me a wide tooth grin. His hair was shaved close to his head, and he had a big, friendly smile with a gold tooth that sparkled. I nodded, taking it all in. I thought you said 4? Don't tell me one of the girls is playing. This isn't co-ed, I whispered to Coach. We're here for moral support, one of the girls said. She had a gothic style with black eyeliner and dark clothes. Her leather jacket and ripped jeans made her look edgy and cool. I'm Ace, by the way. Hunter, I gulped. She was very beautiful, but her dark eyes made me want to immediately duck and run. Mo, Coach barked. Where's your better half? He better be here soon. Where are the cookies you promise? The girl Mo asked, tilting her head. She had neat dreadlocks and wore a bright, colorful t-shirt with cargo pants. Her smile was so wide and fake that it made my skin crawl. You bribed them with cookies? I asked incredulously, trying to wrap my head around it. It was the only way they'd come willingly, Coach grumbled, clearly not bothered by the unusual tactic. What? Everybody loves cookies. Snickerdoodle, Rocky Road, triple chocolate chunks. See, I'm more of an oatmeal raisin cookie guy myself, a voice said, startling everyone. Raisins and cookies? People like you should be shot, Mo muttered. I turned quickly, and there he was. Skylar. He had cut his hair short, almost to a buzz, and his arms were bulging with muscles. His white tank top showed off a tattoo of a goat's head on his neck, along with several others that spanned his arms and collarbones. His blue jeans hung low, exposing his Calvin Klein underwear. Shock punched a hole through my chest when our eyes locked. He was here. He was safe. Skylar! I rasped. Without thinking, I rushed toward him, relief and joy flooding me. As soon as I approached, Skylar yanked my collar, pulling me down so fast I yelped. The cold edge of a blade pressed against my throat, the tip digging in, making me gulp as I stared into his cold, dead eyes. I don't like to be touched. Skylar, knock that crap off, Coach Sullivan barked, or I'll call your probation officer. Skylar regarded me and then scoffed. He slipped the knife back into his pocket, then cocked his head at me. I was breathing fast, taking him all in. It had been 2 years, but everything about him was almost still the same. He walked over to Mo and pressed a kiss to her cheek. Miss me? Not in the slightest, she deadpanned, but cupped the back of his head, holding him there. Skylar snorted and then stood back to his full height, facing me. Head to head, I could see how much he'd grown, and we were almost the same height. If not, he was a few inches shorter than me. Meet your new alternate, Skylar James, also known as Switch, Coach Sullivan announced. Skylar, or Switch, took out a switchblade, toying with it for several minutes. There was something sinister in his gaze that immediately set my teeth on edge. Our eyes locked, and my heart wanted to beat out of my chest. Well, he smirked. It looks like I'm your substitute. Chapter 7. Hunter Davis. Do you two know each other? Coach Sullivan asked wearily. Skylar didn't respond, but his grin widened, looking almost shark-like. I held his gaze, not wanting to back down, but also wanted him to see that I meant him no harm. All the years my father looked for him, and who knew he was just a few towns over at Edgewater Reformatory School. Welp, I don't think I want to know, Coach Sullivan said. Okay, You guys pack up and clear out to the locker room. Our practice starts in 10 minutes, and if you're late, I'm notifying each of your parole officers. Agreed?" The guys nodded. Ty, K-Dog, and Edge all grabbed their backpacks, waving goodbye to the girls as they headed out. A cold, sinking feeling entered the pit of my stomach as Coach wrapped up the meeting. Skylar didn't look at me. He kissed Mo again on the cheek and then dragged Ace into a hug, whispering something in her ear. My heart thundered in my ears and I moved before I could even register it. "Skylar? Wait." My voice caused everyone to freeze, including Mo, who eyed me with suspiciousness. "Look, can we talk? Please, I reached for him and suddenly Mo was in my face. "Hey, asswipe, are you deaf?" "He said he doesn't like to be touched," Mo snarled. "What the hell is going on here?" Coach Sullivan barked at us. "I told you practice starts in 10 minutes. Get moving." "I just need a second to talk to him." "Talk to him after practice, Davis, or else you'll be doing suicides for a week," Coach Sullivan replied. "Move it!" I pursed my lips and scoffed, storming out of the stadium and into the locker rooms. Mason and the others were waiting for me, but I ignored them, tossing my stuff in my locker with more force than necessary. "How was it? Did the rejects look promising?" EJ asked, laughing. "Shut up, EJ," I muttered, shrugging on my jersey and then my cleats. Mason whistled when the first of the new recruits came into the locker rooms. The guys paused mid-dress, gauging the newcomers. Ty kept his head high, glaring at them all, while K-Dog looked like he would bolt at any second. Edge shot them all a somewhat manic grin, while Skylar looked so freaking bored like he'd rather be anywhere else. The coach entered a second later, along with assistant coach Axel Cruz. "All right, listen up. I won't say this twice, so perk those ears up. These are your new recruits. They'll be joining the team effective immediately. I don't want any bullcrap from any of you, on both sides, or you're out faster than you can say, Fumble. We have a zero-tolerance policy, got it? Good. Now let's get out there and play like we actually know what we're doing." "Yes, Coach!" everyone roared. "Stick with your QB," Coach said to Skylar. "You three, with me." My heart started hammering when Skylar approached me. We stared at each other for several moments, and he kinked a brow. "Davis, if you're done staring at him, why don't you show him where he can put his stuff?" Coach Sullivan snapped at me. I jolted and the other guys laughed. "Right, sorry. You can put it here next to mine." I gestured to a locker right beside mine, and Skylar rolled his eyes and stuffed his things inside. He grabbed his equipment and went inside a nearby stall, not changing his clothes with the others. "There's something about that guy that looks familiar," EJ said, frowning. "That's freaking Skylar James, you dumbass," Jordy hissed at him. "Crap, we are so freaking screwed." "Shut up," Mason barked. "Did you know about this?" "Does it look like I freaking know about this?" I spat at him. "Just get dressed. We can talk later." I grabbed my stuff and hurried out onto the field. I did a quick head count to make sure everyone was on the field, and I stepped aside to let Coach take the reins. I felt a lump in my throat and my stomach churned with nerves, my eyes darting toward Skylar every few seconds, yearning to finally talk to him, but terrified of what he might say. He'd changed so much he was hardly unrecognizable. His arms were almost completely covered in tattoos, almost like he was on a mission to cover every inch of skin. Or at least the places he'd been burned. My stomach swooped and I forced my thoughts not to go there. I remembered the vow I'd made to myself several years ago and resolved to keep it. Skylar was here. He was back. No matter how much he hated me, I'd put things right. "All right, you lazy bums. Let's see what the new guys got," Coach Sullivan said, pointing at Skylar. "Skylar, run a few drills. Show us what you can do." Skylar stepped forward, a bored look in his eye. Mason and the others watched him skeptically, arms crossed, expecting nothing. Whenever we played together as kids, Skylar had been the worst player on our team, but things would be different this time. Coach Sullivan wouldn't have picked him if he didn't have any talent. My heart thundered in my ears when Skylar took his position, gripping the ball with an air of confidence. He scanned the field, his eyes sharp and calculating. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, he launched the ball into the air. It spiraled perfectly, cutting through the sky like a missile, landing precisely in K-Dog's hands, who stood 30 yards away. I didn't even see him run. "Next, route running," Coach called. Skylar set off, weaving through the cones with agility and precision. His movements were fluid, almost graceful, as he dodged and pivoted with effortless ease. He reached the end of the drill in record time, catching the ball mid-stride and tucking it securely under his arm. "Damn," EJ whispered next to me. "He's good." He was. I licked my dry lips watching him, not sure what to make of it all. Skylar had changed a lot, and judging by the furious look on Mason's face, he hadn't actually expected any of the reform students to actually be good. Coach placed Skylar at the 40-yard line, a challenge in his eyes. "Let's see how far you can throw, Skylar." Skylar took a deep breath, his muscles coiling like a spring. He cocked his arm back and, with a powerful motion, hurled the ball downfield. It soared through the air, a perfect spiral, seeming to hang suspended in time before landing in the end zone. A flawless 60-yard throw. The team was stunned into silence, jaws dropping in disbelief. He was almost better than me. The thought startled me immediately, and I stamped it down hard. It didn't matter. Skylar was my substitute, so it wasn't likely he'd see much game time unless I wasn't performing well or injured. Mason stomped over to me, his face darkening with rage. "Find out what the freaking hell he's doing here!" Mason hissed. "Why?" I asked, crossing my arms over my chest. "Coach recruited him. Just leave it be." "Leave it be? You're out of your freaking mind, Davis," Mason continued, but his voice was low and cutting. "The guy's been gone for 2 years and suddenly he shows up and joins our team? It's suspicious as hell. I don't like it." Rage quickened my blood and I turned to face him. "Don't like what? The fact that you guys almost tortured him, or that he might actually tell someone about it?" Mason stared at me and then his mouth curled into a smile. He stepped forward, crowding my space. "We tortured him, Hunter. Or did you conveniently forget that fact?" My nostrils flared. "I had nothing to do with it." "You didn't stop it." Mason smiled, patting my back. "And if I recall correctly, your dad took the settlement money, didn't he?" "Yeah, that's what I thought. Find out what the reject is doing here and do it fast." Mason shoved on his helmet and jogged out onto the field. I gritted my teeth. Damn it. I turned back to Skylar, who was watching us with an unreadable expression on his face. My throat constricted when we locked eyes, but he quickly turned away. There was no way I could explain this to him in a way that would make sense. How could I explain that Mason and I were still friends, even after all the horrible things he did to Skylar? "Davis!" Coach Sullivan yelled at me. "Is there a reason you're not paying attention? Or are you just daydreaming?" "Sorry, Coach." I swallowed hard and powered through to the end of practice. I waited for the perfect moment to talk to Skylar, my heart racing. From a distance, I watched him chat with Ty, Edge, and K-Dog, their voices mingling with laughter. His short hair was still damp from the showers and his face was slightly flushed. The conversation around me faded into background noise as my gaze stayed locked on Skylar. Mason's voice cut through the haze. "There's a party tonight at Kelly's house. Are you coming?" My eyes remained fixed on Skylar as he bumped fists with the guys and began to walk out. Yeah, go without me," I mumbled, barely aware of what I was saying. I threw my backpack over my shoulder and darted out of the locker room, sprinting after him. I raced down the corridor, my feet pounding against the floor, but when I reached the halfway point to the stadium, I realized I had lost sight of him. Panic set in as I struggled to catch my breath, my lungs burning from the sprint. "Looking for something?" a voice said suddenly, making me jump. Skylar was leaning against the fence, the stadium lights behind him creating a blinding halo around his figure. His knee was bent, and his pale blue eyes seemed as cold as an Arctic wind. I straightened up, trying to compose myself. "Yeah, you," I managed to say, my voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through me. "Keep looking." He moved to walk away and I tried to grab his arm, but he rounded on me. Skylar shoved me so hard against the wall all the air was punched out of my lungs. I barely sucked in a breath when his knife was poised at my throat. "You don't like to listen, do you?" I said, "Don't touch me." Sorry, Jesus, Skylar," I gasped, shaking. I put my hands up in a placating gesture. "I won't hurt you. I'm sorry. You're right. I won't touch you." Skylar cocked his head, then pulled his switchblade away. "Whatever, get lost." "Wait," I said to him. I need to talk to you." "There's nothing to say, Davis," Skylar replied, mimicking Coach Sullivan's tone of voice. "How can you say that?" I replied. "You've been gone for 2 years. I looked everywhere for you." "Evidently not hard enough," Skylar said, smiling, but it was sharp. "What do you want, Hunter?" My throat closed like a straw sucking in too much air. I rasped, "to apologize. I'm sorry. I'm so freaking sorry. Skylar burst out laughing. It was a harsh, manic sound that made the hairs on my arm bristle. He looked almost deranged with it, like the thought of me apologizing for him being tortured was somehow hysterically funny. "Oh, that's a good one, Hunter," Skylar said, still chuckling. "Wow, you almost had me there." "What?" I said. "I'm serious. I'm sorry. Did Mason put you up to this? Obviously, you both share a single brain cell." Skylar smirked. "Well, I don't have time for this. I need to check in with my parole officer, so have a nice life." "Wait, Skylar!" I called out, reaching for him again. In an instant, Skylar's fist connected with my stomach. A sharp, blinding pain exploded in my abdomen, doubling me over. I gasped for air, clutching my midsection as the ache radiated through me. My vision blurred, and I staggered backward, struggling to regain my breath and composure. The pain was intense, making it hard to think straight or understand why he'd reacted like this. I stared up at him, confusion and hurt mingling with the throbbing pain in my gut. Skylar grabbed my ponytail and yanked my head up. "Your apologies mean nothing," he hissed, then started laughing again. It was a sick crackling sound like a hyena. "Especially since you still hang out with the guys who tried to murder me. Funny, isn't it? So freaking hilarious. Hunter Davis, the star quarterback, tried to kill his best friend." I shook my head, trembling. "No. Skylar, please, I would never." "Exactly. You would never," he chuckled. "Spineless piece of crap." He shoved me so hard that I toppled over, clutching my stomach on the ground. "Stay away from me, Davis, if you know what's good for you." "Everything all right here?" a voice said from the shadows. I glanced up to see Mo, Ace, and Ty all standing there. Mo had her hands shoved deep into her cargo pants and her jaw was tight. "Never better." "Who's in the mood for pizza?" Skylar said, throwing his arm over her shoulder and steering her away. Mo cut her eyes at me, and I shivered when I saw vengeance in them. They left me on the ground wheezing from Skylar's furious right hook. Damn, a sucker punch? Really? God. I rolled onto my side and used the wall to stand on shaking legs. Okay. So clearly I needed to change the way I approached him. My ponytail had come loose and several strands of hair framed my face as I tried to catch my breath. Skylar was right. How could I apologize when I still hung out with the people who tried to kill him? It was absurd. Shame flared across my face, but Skylar didn't know why I was hanging out with them. I had my reasons too, and over the years I was just waiting for him to come back so that we could reopen the case together. But did he want that? What if he'd moved on with his life? Mason was paranoid, but it wasn't like he had nothing to be worried about. If Skylar did want to reopen the case, it would blow everyone's life to pieces. I had to be the one that helped him with it. I had to be there for him just like I should have been all those years ago. I grabbed my backpack, which had dropped on the floor, and went to catch the next bus to my dad's house. When I arrived home, I noticed my dad was still passed out on the couch, the news clippings still sprawled across the kitchen table and the couch. A part of me wanted to wake him and tell him that Skylar was here. He was back, but I didn't know if my father would want to go and find him. Maybe it would be too soon. It was clear Skylar wanted nothing to do with me. Would that mean my father too? I sighed and helped my dad to his bedroom. I went into the bathroom and stared at my reflection. My hair was a mess, the ponytail loose while ringlet curls were framing my face. I gently pulled up my shirt and stared at the large bruise forming on my abs. Damn Skylar and his right hook. Taking a shuddering breath, I quickly pulled my shirt down. For months after the accident at camp, I couldn't look at myself. I couldn't stomach what I'd see in the mirror. Skylar was right. I was a coward, a selfish coward who let Mason pull my strings like a doll. For years I felt so alone. Skylar had been worth all those guys combined and more. Bitter tears filled my eyes, but I stamped them down, curling my hand into a fist. I'd set things right, for both our sakes, no matter the costs. Redstone Creek ain't the town for justice, Mr. Mickelson had said. Well, maybe it's time that changed. Chapter 8. Hunter Davis. How the freaking hell did that reject find us? Mason seethed, pacing the stadium. We were all sitting around the stadium, the air heavy with tension. EJ and Jordy looked slightly worried, their eyes darting around nervously. Mason, on the other hand, was pacing the stands furiously, his fists clenched tight. I leaned against the railing, crossing my arms over my chest. What are we gonna do? EJ asked, his voice shaky. This is bad. Mason stopped pacing and turned to us, his face red with anger. We can't just sit here. We need a plan. Calm down, Mason. Skylar isn't going to bother us, I said. Yeah, right, Mason scoffed. Why did he come back here to play for our team? He's up to something, just wait and see. The bastard has been watching me. He's going to screw everything up for us. Can you cool it with the theatrics? I barked at him. Skylar just got back. Nothing has happened yet. And you want to wait until then? Mason snarled. Did you talk to him? What did he say? I pressed my lips into a hard line and stared at my feet. He won't speak to me. See, that doesn't mean he's plotting anything, I cut in. He could just not want to be friends anymore, which is fine. Leave him alone. Or else what? Mason stepped up to me and I glared at him hard. This was a long time coming. For years I had been silent, just going with whatever he said because I didn't want to cause any problems between us. But Skylar was right. I was a coward. The worst type. I let Mason talk down to me and bully me around because his father was the district attorney, and I was scared of what would happen if this got out. Can we take everything down a notch? Jordy injected. We don't have any proof Skylar's going to do anything. I'm with Hunter on this one. Let's just leave it. Yeah, EJ injected. He signed the non-disclosure agreement. We all did. He got his settlement money. If he tries anything, we can just sue him. Mason was still staring me down, but then he relented. Fine. We do nothing. But if he starts anything with me, I won't hesitate to knock him down. I gritted my teeth. What the hell was his problem? It was almost as if he was looking for a reason to fight Skylar. The thought was insane, but then again, it was not entirely off base. Mason never liked Skylar, but his level of hatred toward him now seemed almost extreme. Whatever. I wasn't going to let anything bad happen to Skylar ever again. Just stick to the game. I'll see you guys later. I moved to walk away, but Mason's voice stopped me. You weren't at Kelly's party last night. I froze, then frowned. So, as the star QB, don't you think you should have been there? And continued, then stepped closer. We have an image to maintain, Hunter, or did you forget that? I didn't forget anything, I replied smoothly. I'll come to the next one. Make sure you do, Mason responded. Lavinia has been asking for you, and I wouldn't want to keep a girl like that waiting. The rest of the guys laughed, knowing Lavinia's temper, but I couldn't have cared less. We broke up last year. I didn't understand why she kept coming to Mason and EJ trying to get me to go back to her. It was kind of pathetic. Not that I'd ever seen her as such, but we just weren't compatible. To me, it wasn't like it was a big deal. We remained friends, but her persistence in getting the guys to constantly ask me when we were going to hang out again grated on my nerves. What did she want anyway? Sure. I walked out, ignoring their jeers and catcalls. I went to my classes. I planned to get a BA in sports medicine. Then maybe when I retire from the league, I could work as a trainer or fitness instructor. I didn't have any other plans besides making it to the NFL. Even now that Skylar was back, I wanted to make it now more than ever. That stupid hope of him one day seeing me dissipated, and I realized it had been a pipe dream to begin with. Sure, Skylar wanted nothing to do with me, but my dream was still to make it. I wanted to make my dad proud. I wanted all those people who doubted me to see my worth. I finished up the rest of the day and then headed home. My dad was in the kitchen when I arrived, putting some food in the oven. Hey. Hello, my dad replied. How was school? Good. I dropped my backpack onto the floor. How was work? He shrugged, and I knew that was as much I'd get out of him in terms of communication. My dad worked at the local and had for the past 35 years since my mom passed away from breast cancer. We lived a quiet life. Until I saw some scrawny kid at the side of the road waiting for the bus, and then things changed. Skylar came into my life like a whirlwind, and then there was no one else. The three spent all of our time together, and Skylar never minded being the third wheel. I looked back over at the table and saw the news clippings my dad kept, and I swallowed hard. Should I tell him? I knew he was desperate for any news of Skylar, but I didn't want to get his hopes up. The timer on the stove beeped, and my dad went over to check on the meat I could hear sizzling in the baking pan. I cleared my throat. Dad, there's something... My phone buzzing interrupted whatever I was going to say. I checked it and realized with a start that it was Lavinia. What the hell? Why is she calling me? I need to take this. I got out of my chair and headed to my bedroom, closing the door shut behind me. Hey? Hunter? It's me. I gathered that. Caller ID and such, I replied dryly. She didn't laugh. We lapsed into silence while I waited for her to tell me what the hell she wanted. You have a game coming up, don't you? I frowned. Yeah, the first game of the season in a few weeks. Granite Peak Gladiators vs. the Eagles. Why? Well, Sarah is having a party after, and I thought we could go. Together. My mouth twitched. Look, it's just for the evening. It doesn't have to mean anything, God. What do you think this is? She laughed, but it sounded off. Strangled. I don't think we should be seen together. Why? Is it because of Skylar? Are you afraid that little dweeb is going to tattle on us? I gritted my teeth. No, it's because we're broken up. I don't want to be seen with you anymore, Lavinia. She scoffed. Why? What did I do? You know any guy would kill to have a girl like me, and all you ever did was treat me like I didn't exist. You only asked me out because Mason kept bugging you about it. We barely kissed. We didn't even hold hands. You wouldn't even touch me. That's because every time I did, images of her burning Skylar with a log would flash before my eyes. The burning smell of the flesh would invade my nostrils, forcing the bile to rise in my throat. I could hear Skylar's screams. Still see his face twisted in agony. My heart slammed against my ribcage and my hands turned clammy. Everyone knew Lavinia had a nasty temper. It was why it took me almost 2 years to break things off with her. It struck me then that I'd been half dead, more afraid of what she'd do to me if I did break things off with her. After years of getting to know her, there was little about her that I actually liked. She was mean and selfish, so entitled that it made me freaking sick most days. Why did I ever give her the time of day? We were just kids back then. I didn't know any better, and when the hottest girl in school wanted to hang out with you, what was I to do? Everyone was urging me to say yes, to take her out, to date her even though I knew what type of person she was. I'm sorry, don't call me again. I hung up and quickly blocked her number. I knew I'd pay for that tomorrow, but right now I didn't care. Heading into the bathroom, I pulled up my shirt again and stared at the mulberry bruise that was spreading like ink down my torso and onto my ribcage. I touched it and winced. Damn, it hurt so much. I didn't know how I was going to have practice tomorrow with this wound. "I don't like being touched," Skylar had said. I wonder when that had changed. Then again, he'd spent the last few years in a reform school. Damn it. There were so many things I didn't know about Skylar or understand. Why did he need a probation officer? Did he have charges brought against him? Why did he carry a switchblade? Weren't those illegal? I took my hair out of the ponytail and let it hang at the sides. I blinked in the mirror, noticing my eyes looked a tad bit brighter, inching more to a hazel green just like my mother's. I sighed, then went back outside to finish up supper with my dad. Today was going to be crap. I felt it the second I woke up this morning and fire had ripped down my torso. My stomach ached fiercely, and I could barely keep any food down this morning. Damn. Throwing on my clothes, I got out of bed, walking gingerly to my closet to get dressed. It was hell trying to put on clothes with my aching ribcage, and I wondered if Skylar had broken something. Things just got worse from there. During our practice game, I was up first. I took a deep breath and threw my first pass. It wobbled a bit and fell short with Jordy missing the pass entirely. My stomach cramped with pain, and my ribs ached from Skylar's punch earlier. I tried to shake it off, but the pressure was getting to me. I threw another pass, but it went too high. The guys were silent, their eyes on me, and I could feel Coach Sullivan's disappointment. We were inching towards our first game of the season, and my playing was absolute crap. "Davis, are you aiming for Mars? Get your head out of the clouds and back in the game," Coach Sullivan bellowed. "My grandma could throw better passes, and she's been dead for 10 years. "Yes, sir," I shouted. I tried again, but the second I lifted my arm, my ribs screamed in agony. I threw anyway, but the throw was off. Coach Sullivan shook his head, exasperated. "Hunter, I've seen drunk chickens with better coordination." "Sorry, Coach." He muttered curses beneath his breath and gritted his teeth. "All right, since Hunter doesn't want to play today, you're up, Skylar." Skylar jogged onto the field, bumping fists with K-Dog. He whispered something in Skylar's ear and he nodded. Damn, having him this close was making it hard for me to think straight. All I wanted was to talk to him, to explain things to him, but he kept ignoring me. Skylar kept his pale blue eyes front, ignoring everyone else around him, and got into position. My chest tightened as he lined up and threw his first pass. It was perfect, slicing through the air and landing right in the receiver's hands. The guys erupted in cheers, and even Coach looked impressed. "Now that's how you throw a football," Coach shouted. "Davis, take notes. Maybe if you watch closely, you'll learn something." Skylar's next pass was just as perfect, and the next one after that. Each throw was a dagger to my confidence. He was outperforming me, and everyone could see it. My ribs throbbed with every breath. I swallowed around the blockage in my throat and watched the guys cheer Skylar on. We alternated, but my ribcage was hammering, and by the time I missed my third pass, the coach forced me to sit on the bench. "Nice try, Hunter," Skylar said loudly after one of my missed passes. "Maybe next time you'll hit the mark." I felt my face heat up, but I ignored him. Mason's jaw was clenched so tightly I thought it'd snap. He sat down beside me on the bench, his expression almost murderous. "What the freaking hell is going on?" he snarled. I sighed, gripping my ribcage. "It's nothing. Skylar and I got into a fight, that's all." Mason rounded on me. "A fight? A freaking fight, and now you're telling me?" "It's not a big deal," I replied. "He told me not to touch him, and I didn't listen. He decked me in the stomach. A sucker punch, but..." I hissed when I turned slightly. "He got me good in the ribs." "He injured you? Before a freaking game!" Mason almost shrilled. "Shut up! Keep your voice down!" I hissed at him. Mason laughed, shaking his head. "I knew it. This guy is unfreaking believable." "What do you mean?" "Smarten up!" Mason spat. "Don't you get it? Aren't you getting a degree in sports medicine? A diaphragm injury can restrict your range of motion, affecting your ability to twist, turn, and move quickly on the field. Your stamina, your running, your tackling of it would be affected. He's rendered you useless right before our big game. No. Skylar knew how important football was to me. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't. A jolt of disbelief shot through me, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. No. Skylar wouldn't. He only reacted because I touched him first. And you actually believe that? Mason demanded. I can play, I snapped at him. Just shut up and get back on the field. Mason scoffed and stood. Yeah, because you've been doing so well all practice. He raced off, joining the other guys and getting into position. I steepled my hands in front of me, watching Skylar throw an impressive pass that had my belly cramping. Crap. He was very good. I knew that if he continued to play, Coach would probably consider benching me for this game. Fear seized me in a vice grip. Skylar wouldn't do that. Mason had to be wrong. He wasn't back just to screw around with us. I wouldn't believe it. Even if he was, we deserved it. We ruined his life. Whatever punishment Skylar saw fit, I had to take it. I had to. But even as I thought the words, my entire body threatened mutiny. All right, listen up, you bunch of misfits, Coach bellowed. We're going to run a play I like to call the last-minute Hail Mary. It's a test of your skill, your strategy. He turned his gaze toward the bench, spotting me. Hunter, get your lazy butt up here. Show us if all those hours of practicing actually made you less of a disaster. I stood up, trying to ignore the smirk on Skylar's face. I walked to the front, trying to look confident despite the pain in my ribs. Okay, Hunter, Coach continued. We're counting on you to lead this play. Don't mess it up. If you do, I might have to give you extra laps. Or worse, listen to your excuses. I took a deep breath, nodding. Got it, Coach. I turned to my team. All right, guys, we're going to run a simple handoff to the left. O-line, create a gap. Running back, hit it hard. Receivers, block downfield. On 3. 3! They roared. I took my position behind the center. The center snapped the ball and I handed it off to the running back. The play felt like it was moving in slow motion. The offensive line didn't open the gap, and the running back was quickly surrounded by defenders. Skylar stood off to the side, arms crossed, smirking. Wait, Skylar said, waving his hands. Hunter, are you sure a handoff to the left is the best call? Maybe you should have called something else. I clenched my teeth. Skylar, we don't have time for this. Just run the play. Sure, let's go with our fearless leader's genius plan. If you want to lose yards, go ahead. The team looked between us, unsure. I could feel the tension rising. Let's go, guys, on 3. 3! They roared back. We snapped the ball, but it all went wrong. It was like watching a disaster in slow motion. The players were scattered. The timing was completely off, and I was struggling to make anything work. Then Ty charged in and tackled me with full force. I crashed to the ground, my ribs flaring with sharp, stabbing pain. I gritted my teeth, fighting back a groan as I realized just how badly I'd messed up the play. Every breath felt like fire in my side, and I cursed myself for it. Wow, that went well, Skylar said sarcastically, staring down at me. Who knew chaos could be so chaotic? Asshole. Mason grabbed my hand, helping me stand, and I stood to face Skylar. Do you think you can do better? Show us. He grinned and stepped forward. Gladly. All right, listen up. We're going to run a shotgun spread. 3 wide receivers, double slant routes. Keep it tight, keep it quick. Got it? The team nodded, looking more confident. Coach Sullivan watched Skylar with a frown. Okay, we go with James's idea. My stomach sank. Skylar called the play seamlessly. The guys moved smoothly. He threw perfect passes, hitting the receivers right in stride. The ball flew down the field easily, and I couldn't deny it. He was really good. Maybe even better than me. See? Was that so hard? Skylar said, jogging back with a cocky smile. Pressure's a funny thing, isn't it, Hunter? I forced a nod, my throat tight. Yeah, real funny. Mason and I locked eyes and suspicion wedged like a thorn inside my brain. Maybe Mason wasn't wrong after all. Chapter 9. Hunter Davis. The late afternoon sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the football field. I adjusted my pads, feeling the familiar weight settle on my shoulders. The wind picked up, ruffling my hair as I took my position. This was where I belonged. I watched the other guys on my team assemble, getting into formation for the play. Yesterday had been a whirlwind, but after some thought I told myself not to take what Skylar had said personally. We were all here to play, and if he could improve the game, then I should welcome his criticism. He stood several feet off to the side, talking with Tyrone and K-Dog. It was interesting to see him with friends. When we were kids, Skylar had a lot of trouble meeting other people, and for a while, it was just us. That was until I went off to football camp. The tattoos on his neck stood stark against his normally fair skin, and I noticed that his features were much more refined, cut and chiseled in a way that made it clear he put a lot of time into working out at the gym. I wondered what his life was like now. Was he dating that Mo girl? They seemed very close. But did that mean Skylar wasn't gay anymore? Maybe he never was, and I just overreacted. I cringed inwardly at the memory of that. It had been so stupid to be pissed about his sexuality. It wasn't like he could change it. Over the years, I had realized my mistake. I had screwed up. Big time. So, what if Skylar was gay? Or bi? I should have just gotten over myself. I was so caught up in what people would think of me that I didn't care how much it was killing my best friend. God, I wished I could go back now. To change things, but I knew that would never happen. Skylar clearly hated my guts, and he had every right to do so. Coach's whistle pierced the air, and we sprang into action. The snap was perfect, the ball sailing into my hands with a satisfying thud. I glanced up, scanning the field for an opening. Our wide receiver, Jordy, darted past the defenders, his eyes locked on me. I pulled my arm back, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I fired the ball with every ounce of strength I had. It soared through the air, cutting a sleek path against the sky, and Jordy was already in motion, his eyes locked onto the target. He caught the ball with a flawless grip, barely breaking stride, and exploded down the sideline. Defenders lunged at him, but Jordy moved like a shadow, slipping past with agile, almost dance-like steps. Each juke and spin drew gasps and shouts from our teammates, who roared with excitement, their voices a thunderous wave of support. "Go, Jordy!" I yelled, my heart pounding in my chest as I sprinted after him. Jordy was unstoppable, his speed and agility a blur of motion. One final defender dove desperately at his legs, but Jordy leapt over him with effortless grace, his cleats skimming the turf. The end zone was in sight, and with a final burst of speed, he crossed the line and slammed the ball down in triumph. "Booyah!" Jordy shouted. The exhilaration was electrifying. I was on cloud nine, grinning ear to ear as the team swarmed Jordy, whooping and hollering. We huddled together, the energy palpable as we clapped each other on the back and shouted in victory. "That's what I'm talking about!" Mason shouted and hooted. I laughed when he rubbed my sweaty hair. "All right, ladies, bring it here," Coach Sullivan shouted. We jogged over, forming a semicircle around him. Coach Sullivan scanned our faces, his eyes shining with approval. "That was a solid play, everyone. Excellent execution so far." Skylar scoffed, arms crossed tightly over his chest, looking away with an air of disdain. Coach Sullivan's eyes zeroed in on him. "Do you have something to add, James?" Skylar turned, his pale blue eyes narrowed. "Yeah, actually, I do. While the pass was good, the timing was off. You hesitated for a split second before you threw the ball, which gave the defenders a chance to close in." "What the freaking hell?" My irritation with Skylar sparked. I clenched my jaw, not wanting to respond. I felt so guilty about what happened in the past, and I really wanted us to be friends again. But Skylar was making things difficult by challenging me in front of the teammates. We were only strong when our leadership was, and since I was the captain, it was my duty to make sure everyone fell in line. How could I do that when he was constantly making me doubt my choices? And worse off, having everyone else doubt me too. Your opinion has been duly noted, I responded coolly. In my opinion, I don't think there was anything wrong with it. Come off it, Skylar snorted. For a split second you hesitated. That's more than enough time for them to gain the advantage. And Jordy, your route was a bit too wide. If they had faster corners, they could have easily intercepted you. I bristled at that. There was one thing to insult me, but to insult Jordy for running the play perfectly seemed out of line. Are you serious? I shot back, my voice rising. We ran the play seamlessly. My hesitation was to read the coverage and make sure the safety wasn't going to blitz. And Jordy's route was designed to draw the corner deep, giving us more space to work with. You call that reading coverage? It looked more like second-guessing to me. And Jordy, you were practically drifting out there. We need precision, not guesswork. My fists clenched. That's rich coming from someone who choked on a simple post route just a few hours ago. We scored, didn't we? How about focusing on your own game instead of nitpicking everyone else's? You'll be on your knees begging for my nitpicking when we get slaughtered by the Eagles next week, Skylar gritted out. Enough, both of you. Skylar, your feedback is noted, but there's a way to deliver it constructively. And you, Coach Sullivan pointed at me, channel that fire into improving your game, not starting a fight. Understood? Yes, Coach, we muttered back. Now get out of here. You're stinking up my field with your bickering. Hit the showers and get out of my sight. We'll pick this up tomorrow with clearer heads. Now move it, all of you. I tore off my helmet and walked calmly to the locker rooms. I showered, not bothering to stick around to talk to the other guys, and I immediately headed out. However, the second I stepped out of the stadium, I saw Lavinia waiting for me. Damn it. I considered turning around and walking in the other direction, but it was too much of a hassle to go around campus, especially with my gear shoved into my bag. Sighing through my nose, I hitched my bag higher and walked over to her. When I reached Lavinia, I noticed she was wearing tight black yoga pants with flared pant legs that showed off her narrow waist and wide hips. She had on a black sports bra that matched. I could see the cheerleading squad training several feet away, but I didn't want to think about that. I just wanted to hurry up and get this over with. Hey. Hi. Finished practice? She asked. Yeah. I ran a hand through my still wet hair and sighed. Did you need something? You blocked me. And? I stared down at her and wondered what the hell I saw in her at the beginning of our relationship. Sure, she was beautiful. Hazel eyes and curly brown hair that framed her cute face. A killer body. But beyond that, whenever I was with her, I felt cold. Empty. The team was starting to pour out of the locker rooms, and I could see Mason and EJ waiting for me to finish up with her. Wonderful. Did you need something or... Come to Sarah's party with me, she blurted out. Why? Like you said, there are at least 100 other guys you could go with. They aren't you, Hunter, Lavinia said. Please. My mom... She's... giving me crap again. You know how she is. I won't bother you again. She just wants everything to be perfect. I'm head cheerleader, and you're QB. To her, it just makes sense, and I can't change her mind. In a few years, I'll be going to law school, so I won't have to put up with her, but... just for now. Please? I pinched the bridge of my nose, warring with myself. Lavinia's mom was... something else. She was a former debutante winner of Redstone Creek, and went on to become an international beauty pageant winner. She had won titles like Miss Texas USA, Miss Lone Star State, and Miss Bluebonnet Queen. Her accomplishments were impressive, making her a local legend and a tough act to follow. I knew Lavinia didn't give a crap about all of that stuff and just wanted to study law like her father did, but her mom put a lot of pressure on her. Fine. Just this once." Lavinia squealed, clapping her hands together. I huffed and nodded. "Okay. See you later." "Okay. I'll text you the deets." She grinned and skipped off to her squad. I looked over my shoulder just in time to see Skylar watching from afar, a cigarette wedge between his lips. I flinched when our eyes locked, guilt squirming in my belly. He flicked it away and turned to leave, Mo and Ace not far behind him. Crap. What if he thought we were still dating? Would he care? Of course he would. Lavinia almost freaking killed him. I gritted my teeth, trying to make sense of my feelings. Skylar was a different person, and he didn't want to speak to me. Should I force him, or leave things the way they are now? "Hey," Mason slapped me on the back. "Are you coming over?" "No," I wanted to say, but forced a smile and said, "Sure." We headed to Mason's car and got in. The ride to his house was silent. I was too deep in thought to keep up with the conversation around me. We arrived at Mason's mansion, the car rolling to a stop in front of the grand entrance. We got out and made our way inside. As we stepped into the foyer, I noticed Jack Reed, Mason's father, in the corridor on the phone. Jack Reed was the district attorney of Texas. He was big, bigger than Mason, with neatly cut brown hair, the sides shaved close. He wore an expensive suit, and his gold Rolex flickered in the light. His voice boomed as he barked at someone on the other end of the line. "Nick, you tell that worthless piece of crap to do what I say, or else I'll sue his ass to Kingdom Come." Jack snarled, but the moment he saw Mason, his expression turned thunderous. "Hey, I thought I told you not to leave the Maserati out of the garage." "I forgot." "It won't happen again," Mason muttered, his eyes downcast. "It won't happen again," he yelled at Mason. "That's the 5th time this week, Mason. Do you know where the garage is? Or do you need a map and some directions?" "I already apologize. What do you want me to do?" Mason shot back. "Do better! Your teacher called and said you're failing your classes. Don't think I'm gonna let you ride around thinking you're badass when you can't even pass your classes." Mason's face flushed with rage. "Dad, my friends are here." "I don't give a crap about your friends," Jack said, getting right into Mason's face. The alcohol on his breath was enough to stun me. "God, you're useless! Nothing like AJ and Derek who actually work for a living," Jack snapped, his face contorting with anger. The tension in the air was thick, and I felt a knot form in my stomach as I watched Mason endure his father's wrath. "Why can't you do as I tell you to do?" Mason hunched his shoulders, but he didn't say a word. None of us did. We were all too used to Jack's attitude by now. His gaze was a mix of frustration and disdain. "Too bad you're too stupid to study law. You're lucky you're so damn good at football, or else I would have disowned you by now. Get out of my sight." "Yes, sir," Mason muttered. He sidestepped him and headed down to the basement. We did nothing but follow. Mason dumped his stuff near the back, seething. Jordy turned on the TV and ignored everything else around him while EJ picked up a sports magazine. Mason headed to the minibar, poured himself a drink, and then offered one to me. I declined, and he drained his glass in one gulp. "Piece of crap," Mason muttered. "He always treats us like hot trash. I don't know why Mom still stays with him." Jack never saw a point in Mason playing football, but he wasn't good at much else. He didn't excel in his studies like his older brothers did, choosing to focus more on making it to the NFL rather than looking at career jobs. "I need this to work out," Mason muttered. "He's a jerk, but if I lose football, then—" He shook his head. "I can't lose." I frowned, not sure what the hell he was talking about. "We won't. We will—" "You don't see what he's doing, do you?" Mason interrupted me. "He's trying to replace you. If he replaces you, that means Jordy will be replaced with K-Dog or whatever the hell his stupid name is. Then who's next? Skylar won't want me to play for sure, or EJ will be freaking screwed." "You're overreacting," I said calmly. "Am I? Did you see how he talked crap to Coach about you? To the whole team?" My jaw tightened. "Yeah, I saw it, but I wasn't going to do anything about it. We owed Skylar a debt, more than I could ever repay. Mason was an idiot if he didn't understand that. Skylar knew how much this game meant to me. I could only hope that he wouldn't do anything to jeopardize my chances at playing when the game came. He hasn't done anything yet, so just let it go. Mason stepped closer to me, his hot breath washing over my ear. That's your freaking excuse for everything, isn't it? Especially when it comes to him. If I didn't know any better, I'd think you were defending him. I glared daggers at him. Mason scoffed. Fine. Have it your way, but let's not forget how you got that position in the first place. Let's not forget who put you there. You know what? Screw you. I grabbed my gear and stormed out the door. Nobody tried to stop me. Nobody cared that I left. I grabbed the nearest bus and headed home. I shouldn't have gone there in the beginning. I knew it was going to be the same old crap. Mason's suspicion of Skylar was growing, but for no damn reason other than his own insecurities. So what if Skylar was pointing out my mistakes? He wasn't wrong. There were always ways for improvement. And if they chose him to have as their quarterback, then what could I do about it? Who cares how hard I worked? How much I'd suffered to get there? Instead of heading home, I took a detour to the football field. Skylar was pointing out my mistakes because my playing was sloppy. I needed to improve, to be better. Then they wouldn't have any other choice but me. Skylar was good, but I needed to find a way to be better. That way he didn't have anything to say when we did practice together. The stadium lights were on, making the field bright and ready for practice. I squeezed through the gate and ran onto the field. The turf felt firm under my cleats as I moved into position and got ready to play. Chapter 10. Hunter Davis. I walked into the house party with Mason, Jordy, and EJ right on my heels. The crowd cheered and the air was thick with fog and sweat. The music was so loud it made my chest thump. Drake's newest trap song was blasting and everyone was dancing like crazy, their fists pumping in the air. I spotted Lavinia right away. She wore a tight, short white dress and her eyes sparkled with glittery eyeshadow. I suppressed a scowl, but I forced a smile when she bounced over to me. "Hey! You came!" she shouted over the noise. The red cup in her hand sloshed when she reached up to kiss me on the cheek. "Thank you for coming." "Sure," I said. "Any more for me?" I nodded to her drink. "Coming right up." She bounced off to get us some drinks. Mason shrugged off his orange and blue varsity jacket, and EJ already had 2 bottles of tequila in his hand, while grinding on the nearest chick with his head thrown back in rapture. Jordy was lost to the sea of dancers, chatting it up with the DJ, who I assumed he probably hired to fund the whole thing. "Hey!" Kelly raced over to me and pressed a sticky kiss to my cheek. "Thanks for coming. I told Lavinia you would. I don't know what she was so worried about." I gritted my teeth in annoyance. "Yeah, sure. Bathroom?" "Just over there, hun." Kelly yelped with Mason wrapped his massive bicep around her thin waist and spun her around and into his awaiting arms. I went to the bathroom, closed the door behind me, and took a deep breath. Only a few more hours and then I'd go home. I got out and was immediately greeted by Lavinia, who shoved a red cup into my hand and dragged me to the dance floor. I halted halfway there, giving her a shy smile. "I don't know how," I replied, then went to stand at the wall, ignoring her pouty expression. I sipped my drink, watching everyone around me. The music thumped like the ground was alive, every beat making the room tremble while lights swirled in a crazy dance, lighting up faces and making everything look magical. Except it wasn't magical. I knew these people, and each of them could transform into rabid beasts and try to tear off your skin. I drank until my limbs became loose and weightless, ignoring Lavinia, who seemed dead set on trying to get me onto the dance floor. I watched her, though, my gaze slightly hooded. She had turned to one of her other girlfriends and ground her hips against the other girl's, the short white dress riding up to expose her smooth thighs. It was hot. Most of the guys were breaking their necks trying to catch a glimpse. However, I felt nothing. It was so strange when it came to Lavinia and me. When I was younger, I'd been so desperate for her to like me. I wanted her, and didn't care what it took to get her. She was beautiful and smart, pretty much the perfect package. "Harlot," you said. Memories of her shrilled voice made my skin crawl. I remember the almost demonic look in her eyes as she brought the red log to Skylar's skin and pressed in, not caring how he'd wailed. My belly cramped and I turned my face away. God, what the hell was wrong with me? I even dated her after that. I hated myself for it. Skylar had been in so much pain, and damn it. I drained my drink and quickly went to get another, choosing to stand near the booth and out of Lavinia's sight. There was a pleasant, tingly feeling spreading through me. I wanted it to make me feel light and carefree, like I was floating on a cloud. Instead, guilt flared in my chest, making me want to flee this area. No, I had my reasons for staying here. I gripped the cup tightly, and when it was finished, I grabbed another one. I lost count after that, and by then I was leaning so hard on the wall that I was sure it was the only thing holding me up. Then the front door opened, and a blast of wind tickled my skin, and suddenly whispers broke out among the crowd. I turned my head to look, and froze. Skylar was here, and he wasn't alone. He walked straight onto the dance floor and stood there, hands shoved deep into his pockets. Mo was right behind him, along with Ace, Tyrone, and K-Dog. There was someone else there, too, someone I didn't recognize. He had pitch-black hair, he wore a fishnet shirt that rode up to expose his smooth belly, and his leather pants looked sleek in the flickering lights. He casually wrapped an arm around Skylar's neck, threading his fingers through his graphic t-shirt with a bored expression. Mason was the first to react. He stormed right up to Skylar, glaring down at him. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Partying. You?" "I'm serious." "You made it!" Kelly squealed and jumped on Skylar, wrapping her skinny arms around his neck. "Thank you for coming." "No problem." "Drinks?" Skylar asked, but his gaze never left Mason's. "I'll get them," Kelly announced, then promptly tripped over her own 2 feet. Mason caught her arm. "Go! Have fun, baby! Skylar's in my psych class, remember? I told you," she slurred. "Let me get my new friend some drinks." Mason scowled at her but then helped her up and took her to the kitchen. Skylar and his crew stood around watching them. EJ and Jordy were nearby but wouldn't do anything without Mason's command, so they hung back. Mo whispered something into Skylar's ear, and he nodded. Kelly came back with drinks. She spoke to Skylar for a moment before Mason whisked her away again. The bass pounded through the room, each thump booming in my ears as lights flashed and spun, painting the walls with bright, moving colors. Mo wrapped her arms around Skylar's neck while he stood there drinking from his cup. She wore a bright yellow tank top that exposed her midriff, while her green cargo pants hung low on her wide hips. Skylar rested his hands on her round ass, giving it a good squeeze while she began dancing. Ace joined them, wrapping her arms around Mo and gently kissing her neck. I felt my face warm watching them, and so were all the guys in the room. Skylar didn't have a care in the world while Tyrone and K-Dog busied themselves with drinking and talking to the nearby cheerleaders. "Oh, crap!" EJ yelled. "This my jam! DJ, turn it up!" "Nelly's, it's getting hot in here." Blasted through the speakers and everyone went wild. The music hit me like a big wave, each thump making my whole body shake, while beams of light swirled overhead. That same man walked up behind Skylar, curling his painted black fingernails over Skylar's waist. A slow smile curved Skylar's lips, and he moved away from Mo, grabbed the man by his narrow hips, and spun him around so that his back was flushed against Skylar's chest. My blood quickened when Skylar's meaty hands gripped the other guy's waist, holding him there before he rolled his hips. A desperate moan spilled from the other man's lips, and he leaned his head back, resting it on Skylar's shoulder. Mo and Ace started dancing with each other, swaying their hips in a way that made most of the guys stop and stare. But my eyes were locked on Skylar. He ran his hand over the man's tight abs, reaching down to cup his shaft through his leather pants. My breath caught. The heat seeped into my skin like warm honey spreading over toast. My throat went dry, and suddenly my heart was thundering in my ears. What's happening to me? Skylar's lips found the man's neck and gently sucked on his skin. He dragged his hand over the man's noticeable bulge in his leather pants, grabbing a firm hold of his shaft. Then Skylar started to stroke. I started feeling hot, my varsity jacket suddenly too tight. Sweat dripped down my spine, making my shirt stick to my back. My throat was getting dry, and I swallowed hard, trying to ease the discomfort. The heat crawled up my face and neck, making my cheeks flush. I could feel the sweat beating on my forehead, and I tugged at my collar, desperate for some cool air. My head felt heavy, and everything around me seemed a blur. Skylar's eyes snapped to mine. I flinched beneath his pale blue eyes, feeling caught. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. They held me hostage, rooting me to the spot. The man was canting his hips, desperate for release. Skylar wet his lips, whispering something in the man's ear. The man nodded frantically and peeled himself away from Skylar. He snatched a bottle of vodka and headed upstairs with Skylar not far behind. Blood was roaring in my ears. I couldn't make sense of what was happening, what I was feeling. I guess that answered my questions on whether or not Skylar was still gay. The beat of the trap music was relentless, thumping so hard I could feel it in my bones, and the lights twisted. I thought about what they were doing up there. I thought about Skylar's mouth, the way it curled deliciously, and felt my face burn hotter. Maybe he was in danger? Maybe he wasn't safe? Should I go see? Go help him? And before I could stop myself, I headed upstairs on shaky legs, ignoring the warning bells going off in my head. I rounded the corner and came face to face with the bathroom door, which was still ajar. Skylar was on his knees. The man's head was flung back as he took large gulps of vodka straight from the bottle, his Adam's apple bobbing with each pull. Skylar was cupping the man's firm ass, his head bobbing up and down while obscene slurping noises filled the room. I was getting hotter and more uncomfortable by the second. My blood roared in my ears, blocking out everything else. My stomach cramped painfully from the heat, twisting in knots. It was too much. Sweat poured down my face, blurring my vision. My breaths came in short, ragged gasps. What's happening? I don't understand. Skylar's eyes found mine again, and he smirked. His pink lips were split around the man's impressive girth, and suddenly the floor became the sea. Panic set in as the world spun around me, and I stumbled, desperate for relief from the overwhelming, suffocating heat. I fled. I ran back downstairs with my heart in my throat, trying to escape everything that I had just seen. What the hell was wrong with me? Why did I stay to watch? I looked around for Mason, fear gripping my throat. What if someone else caught me staring? Caught me watching? Whatever. I needed to get the hell out of here. Hey! A voice snapped, yanking me out of my panic. Mo stood right in front of me, her hands on her wide hips. Her dreads were piled on top of her head, but her beautiful face was scowling. Hey, sorry, I was just leaving. I sputtered, looking past her to the door. Leave Skylar alone. Everything came to a stuttering stop. I gaped at her, not sure what the hell she was talking about. I haven't spoken to Skylar in weeks, not since he punched me in the gut and told me to stay away from him. Did she know about us? About what happened in the past? Dread filled my stomach, but I pushed past it. I was too drunk for this. I gulped. He told me not to, so I won't. I mean it, Mo snarled. Stay away from him. Don't look for him. Don't speak to him. He wants nothing to do with you people. Anger quickened my blood. I already knew that, but I was trying to make things right. I wasn't going to hurt him. Look, I just wanted to talk to him, just to apologize. He doesn't want your apologies, Mo spat at me. Can't you see you've done enough? I haven't done anything. I snapped at her, my temper getting the best of me. He won't even... I gritted my teeth. He won't even look at me. I was there too. I saw everything too, and he... I forced the air through my lungs, trying to breathe. I'm sorry. I'm so freaking sorry. Mo laughed in my face. You're sorry? You? Who called yourself his best friend and never even stood up for him? You watched them torture him. You watched them kill him. Pain almost split my skull. No, that wasn't true. I would never do that to him. Memories of that night flashed before my eyes, but it was as if something was blocking them. I thought about the skull fracture and how it sometimes caused blinding migraines that brought me to my knees. I didn't... My tongue wasn't working properly. Everything I said came out slurred and I couldn't think straight this drunk. Skylar is my best friend. I would never hurt him. Then how come it was your blade that cut him the deepest? Mo shrilled at me. I felt like I'd been slapped. I fought to remember, but my head felt like it was being crushed by an invisible force. The blinding pain surged through me in waves, leaving me gasping for relief and grasping at fleeting fragments of memory that slipped away. No. It wasn't true. I would never hurt him. You don't know what the freaking hell you're talking about. Several heads turned at my shout, but Mo didn't back down. She got right in my face. Yeah? Is that why your father sided with the prosecutors and helped label Skylar as a violent offender? It was because of your father that he got sent to Edgewater in the first place. The impact of Mo's accusation hit me like a punch to the gut, leaving me reeling and struggling to find my footing. My father? Impossible. My father had spent years looking for Skylar, trying to gather any information that he could on him. There was no way he'd gotten him sent to Edgewater. Then again, I didn't know how or why Skylar ended up there to begin with. What if she was right? What if my father had something to do with it? It would explain why he spent years searching for Skylar. Maybe he didn't know that's where Skylar had ended up. Bile was crawling up my throat, and I knew if I didn't leave now, I was going to freaking hurl. I tried to step around her, but Mo blocked my path again. Move! I snapped, but she stood her ground, her chin thrust forward in defiance. Damn it! How the hell was I going to get out of here? Hey! A voice said in the distance. I turned to see Skylar and the man from earlier on the staircase. The man looked blissed out, his pupils blown wide and his clothes rumpled. Mo and Skylar shared an intense look before she finally stepped aside. I bolted for the door, crashing down the stairs and retching into the garden beside Kelly's house. Several people made a noise of disgust around me, but I didn't care. Crap. Everything was so messed up. Was what she said true? Did my dad really have something to do with this? No, Skylar was my brother. He wouldn't do that. I had to figure out a way to find out what happened back then. I wiped the bile from my lips and shoved my hands deep into my pockets. The cool air bit into my cheeks, but I didn't care. It was too late to catch the bus, so I walked along the sidewalk, trying to clear my head. I got maybe 10 feet before I heard footsteps pounding against the ground behind me. I turned just in time to see Skylar slamming into me. I cried out as my back crashed into the rough tree trunk, the impact jarring my entire body. Before I could react, Skylar's face was inches from mine, his eyes wild and desperate. He tore out his knife, its cold steel glinting menacingly in the dim light. Don't move, Skylar growled, pressing the blade to my throat. The sharp edge was icy against my skin, and I could feel every tiny tremor in his hand. My breath came in shallow, panicked gasps, and I struggled to keep my fear from showing. What the hell did she say to you? I swallowed around the knot in my throat. Nothing. Liar, Skylar hissed, his blue eyes blazing. Tell me what she said. She said not to talk to you. I won't. I swear I won't, I rasped. Skylar, please. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Back then, I didn't know. You don't know anything, do you? His mouth curled into a smile. Typical Hunter. Glass houses, Skylar tisked. I gulped, ignoring the tip of the knife poised against my throat. Skylar, I don't remember what happened. I had a head injury, but I swear the moment I do. His manic laugh cut me off. It was rabid and crazed, and it sounded so horrible all the hair bristled on my skin. He dug the knife in deeper, and I almost flinched when it pierced my skin, drawing blood. "Oh, Hunter," he whispered, his hot breath grazing my cheek. "I thought day and night about carving you open, peeling the flesh off your bones." He paused, head tilted. But then I thought better of it. His switchblade snapped shut and the pressure was gone from my throat. It's so much more fun to watch worms wriggle on a hook. He shoved away from me then. "Skylar," I rasped desperately, but he was gone, disappearing into the shadows and swallowed by the night. I stood there for several moments, panting hard. I touched my neck and it came away wet with blood. Damn it. The wound stung, but I knew it was nothing compared to what Skylar had faced. I thought about his words and suddenly everything made sense. Skylar joining the team. Mo's cruel but frantic warning. Mason had been right. Skylar was back for a reason, and it was to destroy us all.